Okay, welcome to the October 18th, 2021 Wareham Planning Board meeting. Call the meeting to order and a roll call. All members are present. Aaron Shaheen, Assistant Town Planner, Mr. Ken Buckland, Town Planner, and Mr. Charlie Rowley, Consultant Town Engineer. I'm going to skip ahead to our statement of our planning board's role. Number 3, under preliminary business. The Wareham Planning Board is a land use board whose primary purpose is to provide for and guide the orderly growth and development of the town of Wareham. This board will oversee and administer the land use projects that fall under the jurisdiction of the planning board with 3 primary objectives. 1, to ensure the public safety, interest, and welfare of the citizens of Wareham. 2, to properly apply the state and local laws, regulations, and procedures regarding land use, and safeguard the land use rights of Wareham property owners. These laws, state laws and local laws, which have been established by Wareham voters and their representatives, include the Wareham bylaws, the Wareham zoning bylaws, and the Wareham rules and regulations regarding subdivision of land, as well as the Zoning Act law, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40A, and Subdivision Control Law in Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 41. Other functions that this board has is the consideration and preparation of amendments to the town zoning bylaws for review and vote at town meeting, and the development and maintenance of the Wareham Master Plan. This board is anxious to work with the citizens of Wareham as our town evolves, and we encourage all citizens to familiarize themselves with our state and local laws, regulations, and procedures to help us provide for and guide the orderly growth and development of the town of Wareham. Thank you for your indulgence. I'm going to skip ahead to number 4 and introduce Mr. Aaron Shaheen, sitting immediately to my left. Aaron is the new Assistant Town Planner, working in Mr. Buckland's office. Mr. Buckland, would you care to say anything as an introduction?
Sure. Aaron is can you hear me? Aaron is a great addition to the planning office. He's a fresh graduate, so he hasn't got any bad habits yet. We'll train him well. He's energetic and really wants to make a difference in the town. So he's just the right candidate we have for helping out the boards and the commissions in town. I'll let his work speak for himself as he prepares to report to the planning board on the applications before you.
Mr. Shaheen, any words that you care to say?
Yeah. I just want to say hello, everybody. Thank you, Ken, for the introduction. I appreciate that. But overall, I'm just excited to be here. And it's only about a couple weeks since I've started. I definitely learned a lot, and I'm ready to get going. So thank you.
So one of the agenda items regarding Aaron's new role is the fact that he is preparing some reports or staff reports regarding different applications that come into this board. And Aaron, I think it's fair to say these staff reports on these projects are driven around their applicability and their alignment with our zoning bylaws, or subdivision rules and regulations. It's going to be important that, in my mind anyway, and I'd love to hear comments from other board members, that we have a tight alignment between your role in doing staff reports regarding zoning bylaws and subdivision regulations, and what Mr. Rowley does for us traditionally on a lot of these projects as our consulting town engineer. So I think it would be wise for at least the 3 of us, along with Mr. Buckland, to review these roles and make sure that there isn't overlap, unnecessary work going on, and more importantly, not any gaps. So, Mr. Rowley, you would be willing to sit and talk to Mr. Sheen. Do you have any comments along that line?
No, not this time.
Okay. So this is going to be very important. I'm pleased to see that you've dived in head first, and we can do everything, it's up to us to do everything in our power to make sure it's good, productive time going forward. So I will take the action to set that discussion up. So we'll go back to number 1 under preliminary business, and this is an A&R for 81012 Squirrel Island Road and 0 Squirrel Island Road, West Wareham. Map 74, lot 1010A/71-B. I will comment as we start, this is the 4th time we've had this property in front of us for an A&R. I don't remember, I know we had, I looked it up today, we had one in October of 20, one in March of 21, one of June in 21, and now again in October of 21. I think a couple of them were, I think one we approved, 2 we approved, and 1 we rejected. Do you remember?
I believe all of them ended up getting approved. We did have to go back and revise the first one.
And the reason I bring that up is because the one from March 21 on the middle lot is not reflected on the June 21 one. So that made me think that it may have been rejected. I'll show you if you want to see it.
Sure.
This was October 20, where we made 3 lots. This was March, where we tried to do 2 here.
Correct.
And then we come back in June, and those are gone.
Right. Those were never, that was not reported or acted upon deeds or anything.
So they were approved, but just not acted upon. All right. So this would then appear to be similar to the one that wasn't acted on, just a different layout.
Correct.
All right, you're up. Go ahead, please.
All right. For the record, Sam Iamelli with JC Engineering. As mentioned, a very similar plan was approved by this board back in March, which had essentially created lots 1 and 2, as you see here. This plan is to simply just adjust an interior lot line between lots 1 and 2, as well as create a non-buildable parcel C, which would allow for access to a rear lot.
In both of these lots, and if I look at lots A, B, and C, if you will, this is on lot B, the middle lot.
So we are creating lots 1, 2, and parcel C. Parcel A and B are created for conveyance purposes only. Parcel A will be included with lot 1, and vice versa, parcel B will be included with lot 2.
One comment I'll make to the board, and this is to the roles and responsibilities of the planning board regarding A&Rs. We went through this on the 0 Carver Road, or the A&R that's going to come back up in front of us later tonight about what our role is in A&Rs, and that was to answer the question, is this a subdivision or is this not a subdivision, a yes/no type question. And I'll remind the board that doing the legal research that we did, we discovered that an A&R can be approved with all unbuildable lots. It's up to the building commissioner at the time of getting a permit to decide whether the lot is buildable or not, and the typical notes or on an A&R say that the endorsement of the A&R by the planning board does not constitute granting buildable rights or something to that effect. So I will go to the board members to see if there's any questions. Mr. Schultz, I know you do, and I'm going to start with you.
I'm not going to contradict your statement about the finding on the North Carver Road project. I know that we were quite confused. I'm still quite confused based on the review of the A&R handbook, and I think I need further education as to why we don't need to consider frontage, which clearly the A&R handbook says we should consider. So that's my statement. I'm going to defer to your, because you're correct, that's what we did find. I still don't understand it.
So, any comments regarding this A&R on Squirrel Island Road? Mr. Schultz, are you good here?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Mr. Corbett?
I'm good.
Mr. King?
I'm good.
Mr. Baptiste?
Good.
Mr. Rowley, any comments?
I don't have the plan to look at, so I won't have a comment. Not ready in that block.
Pass this down. I have the Mylar here if you want to look at it, Charlie. You'll notice on the third page in, Charlie, while Charlie's doing that, I'm gonna make a comment to the board. Ken and I try very hard to get the agenda locked down early in the week. However, in the case of A&Rs, given we only have 21 days to act on them, or they will be approved by default. It is in our best interest to get an A&R in front of this board as quickly as possible, and hence our general rule is to add them in right up till the last minute. And we can defer decision on this till next meeting, and because we do have, that's only typically 14 days away. And in this case, our next meeting is, yeah, November something. So if today's the 18th, we have it is 21 days till the 8th. So, we can defer this. I believe we can defer this. Does that sound right to you, Mr. Buckland?
Yes, there's rules and regulations say you accept the A&R at the board meeting, and you have 21 days from that to make your decision.
So, and we could do that at our next meeting on the 8th of November if we choose to?
That's correct. I don't know if you could file it on time with the town clerk, though. That actually makes it, doesn't that make it 22 days if you file it with the town clerk the next day?
I don't know how that works. I hear your point. We may be in a situation we have to decide tonight one way or the other. Mr. Rowell?
You should be able to sign the plan. You're actually creating lots 1 and 2, which are a combination of several different parcels. There's a notation on the plan that says that parcel C is not to be considered a building lot under the current configuration. Lot 1 has adequate frontage, Lot 2 has adequate frontage when you combine 162 feet and 21 feet for more than 180. So I see no reason why I can't sign the plan.
Mr. Shaheen, I will grant you the courtesy of any comments if you care to.
I don't have any comments at this time.
Seeing no further comments, I would entertain a motion to approve A&R 34-21 for Dos Amigos Realty LLC, 81012 Squirrel Island Road and 0 Squirrel Island Road, West Wareham, Mass. Map 74, lots 1010A/21.B.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Corbett and a second by Mr. King. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Mr. King? Aye. Mr. Baptiste? Aye. Mr. Corbett? Aye. Mr. Schultz?
Abstain?
Mr. Swenson votes aye. 401, Mr. Schultz abstaining. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have an A&R 35-21, Richard D. Bowers, Edgewater Drive, Wareham, Mass., map 35, lot 19.
Richard, do you have a paper copy of the plan you just endorsed or approved for endorsement?
Do I have a paper copy
Yeah.
of the plan to approve? No,
You need
I
to,
may have. I have a Mylar here. Charlie, help me out.
you need at least one paper copy to put in the file. He's gonna take that with him, you'll never see it again.
Will you help me out here? Charlie, but would you guide me through this process?
Yeah, just endorse the paper copy for your file, because you're gonna hand the Mylar back over to this gentleman.
We're gonna sign this Mylar now, right?
Do the same thing on the paper copy and put it in the file.
And that's our file. This is ours.
Right. Whoever is authorized to sign A&R plans that you voted on a month and a half ago.
I need a black pen.
Right there.
There should be one in the box.
I'm supposed. I think it has to be a special.
Bill?
On the Mylar.
I got it.
Hey, Bill.
All right, so we're gonna have all members that voted aye. And sign this as well. Leave room for me there. Yep. Thank you.
It's that one I need, isn't it? Uh-huh.
Now, you take that for filing?
Yep. Excellent. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Are we trying to save on the electrical bill tonight?
I think so, yeah.
Okay,
I'm willing to do my part.
So,
how are you?
good, Rich, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. You want to walk us through this one?
Sure. Bill Madden from GAF Engineering here on behalf of Rich Bowers. What they would like to do is they're taking that lot number 19, which is a smaller lot between, I don't have my glasses with me, but between lot 18 and lot number 20, and they're seeking to divide that lot into basically two halves for all intents and purposes, and then convey each half to each adjacent lot. That's the plan purpose. So we're creating two parcels not to be considered building lots to be conveyed to each of the abutters on each side of that lot. So there's two 4,500 plus or minus square foot lots that are to be conveyed and joined to the other two lots.
Mr. Rowley, have you had a chance to see this at all? Mr. Corbett, do you have any questions?
Not at all.
Mr. Schultz?
I have the same concern as before.
Mr. King?
No, I don't have any concerns.
Mr. Baptiste? Nope. Mr. Rowley, I would ask you, is there any consideration that we need to understand, given that part of the proposed parcel 19B is on a private way as opposed to Edgewater Drive. Does that,
No. It still has frontage. It doesn't require it to be all on one or all on the other. It can be a combination of both, but it doesn't matter in any regard because it's only a piece of land which is going to be conveyed to the abutting owner. The note is there that says it's not to be considered a separate building lot, so all the requisite things are on the plan for endorsement.
okay. That said, I would entertain a motion to approve the A&R 35-21, Richard D. Bowers, Edgewater Drive, Wareham, Mass., map 35, lot 19.
So moved?
Second. Have a motion by Mr. King and a second by Mr. Corbett. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. King.
Aye.
Mr. Baptiste. Aye. Mr. Corbett.
Aye.
Mr. Schultz.
Abstain?
Mr. Swenson votes aye. The vote is 4-0-1 with Mr. Schultz abstaining. I think we're good. You have paper copy for me to sign and keep for my record, Bill? Maybe there's one in the box. I don't know.
You should have extras that once you take
That's all right. Let me look. Yep, I have one, I think. I have one.
You're good?
Yeah. And the Mylar is there, Sam, can you roll that out? Is that the old one? Thank you. I didn't sign the, no. Sign this one here.
Just an extra small copy here.
Okay.
I don't need it.
It's my pen. Made its way back.
One rubber band, Bill? One enough?
Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. Ken's gonna look at these folders tomorrow, and he's gonna go, what? Huh?
He's smiling at you.
Okay. We are through preliminary business. Nope, we have one more to go. Number 5, this is a discussion and possible vote on a proposal from the hydrologist Horsley Witten and regarding Fearing Hill Solar Project. Hello, Mr. Shanahan, how are you?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Rowley, Mr. Sheehan, welcome to the fray.
Is Mr. Price with us tonight, do you know?
Full name?
Neil Price.
Neil Price, is he here? Have you, Mr. Buckland, were you expecting him?
No, I was not expecting him.
So, that said, Mr. Shanahan, I've seen some email communication back and forth between you, Mr. Buckland, and Mr. Price, apparently coming to some level of agreement that I would like to understand from your point of view what that agreement is and make sure that our board is aligned or not aligned with that.
Happy to summarize my understanding, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Sure.
As you and the board will recall, there was some discussion between this board, Mr. Buckland, and Mr. Price of Horsley Witten Group with regard to performing a hydrogeological study and issuing a report in connection with this site. A proposal came in dated in August, which was shared with me for my review and approval, saying that we're paying the bill. I had a couple of comments with regard to that initial proposal. My main concern, as you may recall, was that I did not think the proposal as then written adequately addressed the concerns that this board had expressed to me and the concerns that the public had expressed to the board. Specifically, it did not address performing any type of subsurface on-site testing and analysis. So as a result of that, this board sent Mr. Price and I back out to revise the proposal. Mr. Price did that, provided it to Mr. Buckland, who provided it to me. Basically, what I did is took that revised proposal, and I took a look at the chair's email to Mr. Buckland back on August 2nd, where he outlined his concerns, issues, and questions, speaking on behalf of the board. I sent that along to Mr. Price, and I said, Mr. Price, your proposal looks great. The one thing I want you to do is look at these concerns, issues, and questions, and tell me when you complete the study and issue your report, it will address each and every one of those concerns, issues, and questions. Mr. Price assured me that it would, so I in turn said, then we have an agreement between us with regard to the scope of work to be undertaken and the report to be issued. In the process, the fee went up from $28,000 to $33,000, but we've agreed to that also.
So, as I read, I will comment first if the board will indulge me. I was very concerned that in reading the email, it seemed to me that there was an agreement between you and Mr. Price that at the end of this report, all work was done, and whatever he had come back with would be the final product.
Yeah, I would indicate to you in my conversation with Mr. Price, he said based on his knowledge of the site and the project at this point, he was comfortable that the scope of work would get the board where it wanted to go. He indicated to me, and I want to indicate it on the record, he said, look, after you dig the test holes, do the soil analysis, I may come back to you and say, I want another percolation test done at point D, I want another test boring done at point C. I can't guarantee you I will be fully satisfied at the end of my report. And I said, if you need to put an addendum on your proposal to get where the town wants to go, I will agree to it at that time.
So that, from my personal perspective, that's where I was at. I was comfortable that the plan as outlined appears to be headed in completely the right direction, but until I see that report, I will never be able to say I'm satisfied or not until I see it, so. Any comments or questions from the board? Mr. King?
No, I think you hit it right on the head, you know, we really can't make any informed decisions till we have the report in hand, and that's the next logical step. You know, it doesn't say that we're going to approve or not approve the project, but without that information, there's no moving forward.
Mr. Baptiste?
Satisfied. Same thing Mr. King said, I guess.
Mr. Corbett?
Covered it well.
Mr. Schultz?
I have a slightly different remembering of the original discussion, which is this was envisioned as a potential multi-phase study. And one of the findings that we expected from Mr. Price was a statement of what he could not determine as a result of this study and what risks were unknown still that could only be addressed by further study. Now, whether we engage in that further study or not is a separate question. But I was expecting a finding that lets us know what he still can't comment on or can't answer, if appropriate.
We discussed that. Oh, of course we did. I kind of personally, when Mr. Shanahan came back and said, I think the new proposal is not a dual phase, is not a two-phase approach. The new proposal is a single-phase approach, and there's an understanding between Mr. Buckland, Mr. Shanahan, and Mr. Price that they believe they can do it all in one swoop.
I understand that's what this new proposal says.
So,
He wants you to adjust your mind.
so I understand your concern. I don't know how to respond to it.
Well, we're at where we're at, and I think we need to move forward, and we'll, as you said, we'll have to read the report and see where we're at when it comes in.
Mr. Buckland, do you have any comments you care to make?
I think it's reasonable to assume that Neil Price, as a professional hydrogeologist, will know where there's additional information that's necessary to, if there is anything that's necessary to address in the report. The additional information is could be obtained by additional field work, was agreed to, but the risk factor is still something that can be included in the report by Neil Price.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I may be able to add some specific comfort to Mr. Schultz as well as the board and the public. There's specific language in the proposal that indicates there will be a draft report issued at the outset. That will be reviewed, obviously, by the planning board, Mr. Buckland, Mr. Sheehan, perhaps me and my engineers. If at that point Mr. Schultz says, wait a minute, I had two more questions, I don't see them answered, at that point, you'll be able to go back to Mr. Price, and from the data he has, he may be able to address it specifically, or he may say, I have to go back out and do a little more research, but I think that will get you where you want to go. So that will make it a two-phase process, if necessary.
Mr. Rowley.
I think that task 1 and 2 are something that can be done, and perhaps it's what Mr. Shanahan just alluded to. You're going to get just a preliminary, shall we say, draft of what he has to date in terms of information. He'll reply to that, and as a result of the findings from task 1 and 2, you'll go directly to task 3 and identify where your testing's going to be done. So I think you've got a chance to move ahead, get going on it.
I will make my last comment in that, to Mr. Scholz's point, when we see that draft report, personally, if I'm not satisfied I have enough data to make a sound decision, we will ask for more, and we will keep asking for more until we do feel we have enough data to make a sound decision. So that will be my philosophy going
course.
forward. Okay.
Continue.
Any other comments?
Comments?
I'm sorry, this is not a public hearing. This is a negotiation on this contract for work to be done under 53G account. I would entertain a motion to accept the proposal from Horsley Witten and authorize Mr. Buckland to set up the 53G account for payments and get this project underway.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Schultz and a second from Mr. King. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Baptiste?
Aye.
Mr. Corbett?
Aye.
Mr. Schultz?
Aye.
Mr. Swenson votes aye. 5-0-0.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you. I will address it now. Mr. Sheehan, if you, just for public record, we had some confusion, this mainly due to me. We continued the public hearing on the Fearing Hill Solar Project till tonight, but did not put a public hearing on the agenda. Therefore, we're not having a public hearing tonight. We will need to, I've checked into the situation, we're okay with that. We just need to continue the public hearing till November 8th. Did we decide that was this next second Monday? And I need to have you sign a piece of paper that says we're going to do that. I don't know where that piece of paper is. Do we have some in the box, Mr. Buckland?
There is a form in the box for extension, continuance of the hearing, yes.
Okay, so we'll do that if you don't mind.
Aaron, maybe you could go look in the box.
Yeah, so to the public, I messed up by not having a public hearing on the agenda tonight. I hope people notice that on the agenda, and I'm sorry that we don't have opportunity for you to talk tonight to this issue, but we will have on November 8th, and we will, I will work diligently to make sure that the public hearing is on every agenda going forward, and I apologize for missing it tonight. Did you find that? That might be it right there.
Certainly.
Thanks.
Yeah, you should get a nice pen out of the deal to sign it.
You know the project number?
You know, I never liked those. They're too thin.
2121?
Jan's got 2 or 3 of them that, when she worked for a lawyer, he'd give them to her. I don't like the feel of them in my hand. I like the cheap old 39-cent bit.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate your patience with us on this. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Continued public hearings. 31-21 site plan review for LSE Hydra LLC, 364448 North Carver Road, Wareham, Mass, map 104, lot 1046. B/B and V/C ground-mounted solar energy generation facility.
My name is Linda Renta, and I'm the owner of the property.
Hold on 1 minute. Before we begin, I'd just like to make a comment, and as we go along in this meeting and future meetings, I think it may be pertinent, so bear with me while I try to. I've talked with Conservation Commission, and I've talked with the Conservation Agent, I've talked with the Zoning Board of Appeals Chairman. I'm trying to figure out how this board can work more closely with these other boards, and we can be more productive and more efficient, if you will. And the reason I bring it up here, I just want to make a comment. A proposal for a solar farm just north of yours, Rocky Maple, I believe it's referred to as, was approved by this board and rejected by the Conservation Commission. We could be headed into a very similar situation. We're going to continue, because this is on our agenda tonight, we're going to hear from the applicant, we're going to hear from the board, and we're going to hear from the public. But as we do this, I want people to also keep in mind that as part of the site plan review for a large-scale solar array, before this board can make any decision, bear with me, I should have been prepared. Before this board can make a decision, the applicant shall, I'm reading from 1551 of the Wareham zoning bylaws. The title of 1551 is Relation to Conservation Commission Approvals. The applicant shall submit to the planning board or other permit granting authority, in addition to other requirements for site plan review, either a determination of non-applicability of Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and Wareham Wetlands Protective Bylaw. So that's the first is either a determination of there isn't a wetlands impact, or two, an order of conditions or order of resource area delineation covered by the proposed commission for the purposes of protecting these interests described in the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act and the Wareham Wetlands Protective Bylaws, Division 6, Section 1. My point being that our zoning requires that the Conservation Commission basically make a ruling as to wetlands impact before we can, and we will adhere to that going forward. And we're going to try to figure out how to work closely with the Conservation Commission and the applicant in doing such. So, that all said, I'm worn out. I'll turn it over to the applicant. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Bob Rogers with GAF Engineering this evening. And you're spot on with your comment. We're very close to filing the notice of intent with the Conservation Commission. I hope to have it done earlier, but it's going to be filed this week, and so we file it this week. We would have our first hearing with the Conservation Commission on November 3rd. But we were given a list of items to address questions from the planning board at the first public hearing. One of which was, I guess I'll just go through these, talking about the runway, how active that is, the cranberry bog that's proposed for the solar array, issues with beach grass, Noise, I'm just going through the list, and then we can address them as you direct. There's a question about noise, so we did submit a noise evaluation analysis questions for Mr. Dan Watson regarding recycling, decommissioning. There was a question about the amount of work proposed within the 100-foot riparian zone, which I could tell you was 48,000 square feet. I think the specific question was how many panels are in the 100-foot, but we quantified the disturbance per the requirements of the notice of intent. And so right now, currently on the plan, it's 48,000 square foot disturbance within the 100-foot riparian, which, as we discussed, it's previously disturbed, but that's something that certainly be closely scrutinized by the Conservation Commission. Charlie asked, how does the Form B match up with the solar fields? And I did not have a chance to take a look at that. I don't know if Mr. Rowley has had a chance to finish his review. And so I guess with that, I would like to turn it over to Linda Rinta and Dan Watson to go through those for the board.
Fine.
Yeah, my name is Dan Watson. I'm the development manager for Lodestar Energy, which owns LSC Hydra, which is the applicant for the project. I'll let Linda handle the first few questions about the runway and the bog. I think there's a question at the previous meeting about the dual use agriculture. The project just north of ours is kind of a unique solar project in the way it's mounted. I understand there have been some issues with that. They're trying to get the state's incentive for a dual use agricultural and solar. We're not attempting that. Ours is going to be much a lower profile of a solar project with our standard mounting. Hopefully we won't run into those issues. We won't run into those issues. And while we're going to work with Linda, the owner, to do some beach grass and whatever we can to support pollinators within the panels. We're not applying for any specific state adder, so we don't have any specific regulations. And basically, we don't have to mount them on 30-foot poles, which is the good news. We're not proposing anything like that. So I think that was one of the questions. We did provide a noise evaluation just from our engineer internally, who looked at, basically tried to find what was our loudest rated equipment, which is I think about 64, 65 decibels, and then did a rough analysis of what that would be from the street. It would be a quiet murmur, which if you've ever walked by any of this equipment wouldn't be too surprising for you, but we provided that evaluation. Happy to answer any questions on that.
Well, may I interrupt?
Yes.
I'm trying very hard, personally, to learn about this aspect of solar. Inverters and transformers and HVAC equipment and things like that, and potential noise impact. The analysis done here told me that the loudest equipment is the transformers, which doesn't surprise me. And it would generate 25.8 dBA at the property line, which is 300 feet from the transformers itself. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
And the comment here is this is approximately equivalent to the noise produced by a whisper or a quiet rural road.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's not, that was just pulled from, I think.
No, that's fine. I just have a hard time saying rural.
Quantify, yeah.
I believe this has been distributed to the board to review. I'm sorry? I haven't seen it yet. Okay.
We got a few extra copies, do you want? I think so.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I went to Sonia and Ken, so just you, okay.
I'm good.
I'm
Do you
upset.
want to move on? Will there any?
Ask this gentleman questions? or we-
Sure, sure. I'd like to keep this as informal as we can until we open up to the public.
So, Mr. Watson, you spoke to some of the questions on, from last week. One of the questions, or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, back in September. I had some questions about the mounting for the arrays, and they're going to be on steel pylons, is that what we confirmed?
Yes,
These are 8-foot steel screws that you're going to drive into the ground?
yes.
Okay.
Roughly 8 feet, sometimes a little longer, depends on the equipment.
Long steel screws. And your decommissioning plan will remove
Yes.
those? And you're going to remediate the removal as part of the decommissioning plan?
Yes.
Okay. Dual use. I think the rest of my questions will be for Ms. Renta.
I think,
So decommissioning, recycling, not landfills.
yeah, I think there was the questions on decommissioning, I think was the other thing. And we provided a plan, and, we're happy to provide a decommissioning bond. That is kind of becoming pretty
Okay, so-
standard for the town, for most towns I work with, so that's totally fine. And we
Okay, so
understand
the
that.
other comment we had on decommissioning is we do not believe, or I do not believe, and I think Mr. Rowley mentioned this, is that net proceeds should be reduced, should reduce the amount for the decommissioning bond, because we can never guarantee that those proceeds will be received. So that's another comment
Yeah,
for consideration.
I would have to agree with that as well.
And then the only other comment on decommissioning was just considerations for recycling the panels.
I think we're happy to include a clause that says we'll make best efforts. I mean, it's 20 years from now.
20 years from
like you
now,
said.
we're hoping that
Yes,
recycling
absolutely.
will be better. Have you guys ever decommissioned a solar project yet?
No,
Has anybody decommissioned?
probably in Germany, where they've been active for more than 20 years, but in most places in the US.
Right, I
they're
don't
not
think
that
we
old.
have any experience to
Yeah.
draw on.
Fortunately, none of our projects have broken down yet, and we haven't had to do that, so crossing fingers.
All right, that's all I had on decommissioning then.
Mr. Corbett, any questions?
Do not.
Mr. King?
Not at this time. Oh, actually, I have one. You had mentioned there was about 48,000 square feet in the 100-foot no-touch, or the 100-foot
Yes.
buffer. With a project of this size, why invade that area at all? I mean, we're only talking an acre.
Well, it's a relationship between the solar company and the landowner, and the landowner's desire to keep the most productive bogs in production. So I guess I would defer to Linda Renta on that.
And I would add, I think, is our total acreage development?
Well, the
here?
total acreage is 49, but the development is it's only 9.9 acres of solar
9.9
of
acres.
of 48 acres.
So it's a 10% reduction, and to be frank, we've reduced this project already. Eversource has limited us, and this is actually a pretty small project for us, at least, and I think smaller than some of the other ones in front of the board.
I'm looking at the footprint on Google Earth, and it's hard for me to understand why you'd have to invade that 100-foot buffer at all with a piece of property this large.
I think I can speak to that.
Okay, please.
That happens to be an upland cranberry bog. It's not abandoned. I harvested it this year. It's a poorly performing because it's not a true wetland. Most of our bogs are wetland bogs. I wouldn't put any panels on our wetland bogs. I think Dave was out and has looked at this preliminarily. I believe that we can satisfy the requirements, the 8 requirements of river protection. To tell you the truth, this plan is an old plan for me. We've been working on this for over 5 years. This is my 3rd developer. One that could work and do what we wanted, which was to leave our landscape a farm and not have it be an industrial property. I don't have land that I can forfeit. This particular poorly performing upland bog, right now it's beside the river, as you can see. We use fertilizers and herbicides and pesticides on it. We flood it. It doesn't hold water on its own. What I would do, and it occurred to me, coming up with a long-range sustainability plan for my farm, that's what I do for work. I write sustainability plans for farmers in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, and I wrote one for myself. And my plan said I should move that bog off the river because I know that the protection of the Wewianick River, and there's a lot of competition for the water use, and the testing that's done on it regularly, it would be in the resource's best interest, not just mine, and in my best interest, long-term, to replace that production on a bog that's away from the river. And I can't afford, if you'll notice that land, you think it looks like a big piece of land? Most of it's unusable if you look at it. It's really very small. In fact, we have a hard time, we don't have a lot of usable land. What I can tell you from my work is that in New England, and this isn't a Wareham problem, it's not a Cranberry problem, it's not a Massachusetts problem, it's a fact of life. A small farm cannot go on raising food sold wholesale unless you have another income stream on your property. And in cranberries, we have wetlands and we have sand. I grow beach grass. That's something I can do in sand. But there's not a lot, I can't grow tomatoes. There's not a lot of other things we can do with that property. I don't have land to forfeit. I do believe when we get to the Conservation Commission that I can satisfy those requirements, and I think that the land will be permitted. I don't expect it to be exempt, but I expect to be able to present a plan that I think will be better than what we're doing now. You'll see there's little strips of things here and there. That's what, I put the solar panels away from the other people in the back of our property, not in the front of it, in the back of our property. I've already talked to my neighbors. They said they would rather see that than another alternate use. Talk about the SMART plan, the one that we hear a lot about, the agricultural do-use SMART plan. I have hammered them with my applications. They have, one of their rules is that you have to have, the mounts have to be 10 feet in the air.
Say it again for me.
One of the requirements for the Massachusetts state dual use with the ag adder is that the mounts have to be 10 feet high. Well, 10 feet high means, I know our bylaw says we have to have fencing and we have to have shielding. That is so land consumptive. Just think about the old blueberry patch that I'm planning to use. Just to raise the fence, I would have to put a berm up. Now, the one thing I know from doing ag work is that you have to have a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 slope in order to support a berm, and then put a fence on top of that, and then put shielding on top of that. That's not very big. The blueberry patch is 4 acres. It's not very big. I would eat up a big chunk of that if I put the 10-foot mounts on. And so we didn't go with 10-foot mounts. We went specifically for ground shorter mounts. And I know what I wanted to do was also what was important to me, and that's what made this particular solar developer work for me. I don't want to be fenced out of my farmland. I grow beach grass. I can grow beach grass between solar panels. It's only this high. I don't need 10 feet. I don't need 10 feet for, I also write pollinator plans for farmers, and I keep bees myself. We bring in bees to pollinate our cranberry bogs, and I can put them in a pollinator habitat behind a fence, and they won't be offensive to my neighbors. Frankly, my neighbors will be much happier with them behind the bogs and behind a fence than they are when we plunk them here and there. So what we were trying to come up with was an overall sustainability. How can we keep our farm together and go on farming? And this was what we had come up with that we could do. And I expect to go before the Conservation Commission, and I expect to have a good conversation with them, and I think that I can convince them that this is a better use. And if I can't, well, I'll go on farming that bog and I'll have to renovate it, but it won't be the best use for the resource. The best use for the resource would be a more passive use with the solar panels. But that's out of my control. I can only do what I can do. And this is what we've put together. This would allow us to have a steady income because, you know, frankly, it's not just cranberries. You can't, on a small family farm, you can't compete in a wholesale food market. You just can't. So that's the gist of it. I think that you've got the design. We typically are under a megawatt. I'm having a hard time keeping the interest of my solar company. They're not that interested in me, if you want to know the truth. It took me 3 years to get an agreement from Eversource. 3 years. And that's before we even get to design or coming before you or everything else. So this has been a long slog. And I can tell you that there are people behind me in the queue that's waiting for an Eversource blessing. Good luck. That has been a hard fought deal. So this is very small compared to what you're looking at, compared to all these others that I see going in. Mine is really small. It's on a dead-end street in an agriculturally zoned area, and my neighbors are not opposed. And I'm willing to do what I have to do, but I don't have any land to give away. That's it.
Anything else?
No, I think you got it all.
No, I appreciate your comments. Mr. Rowley, any comments?
I don't have a full report that I can give you, but it will be for the next meeting. I will say with respect to Mr. King's question about doing anything in the, I think it's the outer 100 feet, maybe of the riverfront area. Conservation Commission would require an alternatives analysis for doing any work within the riverfront. So I would assume that Ms. Renta and her team would put together that analysis, and it will include a no-build, and it'll include alternative suggestions, including the one that she's laid out tonight for you. So that will be a part of the documentation that I would expect that you'd receive before you can make your decision. But it's typical analysis that gets done when you're working within a riverfront area. And if you're in the outer, what they call the outer riparian area, which is the 100 feet that's furthest away from the river, not the first 100, they allow you to do certain things if there are no alternatives. So she's going to have to lay out that argument for the Conservation Commission.
So I'm anxious to hear from some of your abutters. I hope there are some here tonight.
No,
I don't know if there, we'll find out.
I have 2 abutters.
Speaking for myself, Mr. Rowley's going to move ahead. You are working on a analysis report that will be available on the 8th of November.
And before that.
Okay. It is my opinion, and just my opinion, and I'd like to hear yours as well, about moving forward at the Conservation Commission and letting this board follow what goes on there. And I don't want to waste our time. I think that is the critical organization that you need to work through right now. You've answered most of our questions. There are still a couple open ones. I think this board has a pretty good understanding of what you're trying to do.
I have some more.
Understood. But that would be where my head's at. Mr. Scholes, you have some questions.
Just one, I think one question for Ms. Renta. You note that this is an upland bog that has been historically underproductive. I don't know what the right,
Yeah, that's good.
what makes a bog underproductive?
Well, for one thing, this wasn't, it's not wet. It doesn't hold water. It doesn't, it's not a wetland. I mean, the newer bogs, this was built in, oh, God, I can't remember. I don't know, maybe 1980, maybe 1970 something. We know a lot more now about constructing new bogs. And so people can go in and create a wetland where there isn't one. They dig it out, they level it off, they put in a clay base maybe, or a stone, impervious
Something
base.
to trap the water.
To hold the water. And then they put in a layer of organics and then sand on top of that. But they've learned how to build a wetland in an upland. That bog was built before we knew how to build a wetland in an upland. And if I were to, but it is part of, and I will say this, it's an ocean spray bog. And that means something because I have a market for that fruit. And so that's the other reason why, for me to give that up, I can swap that out maybe for another piece that we would renovate, but I can't just give that up. And what I should do is dig it out, put a layer of
Remediate it as you described.
yes, renovate it. That's what I should do, if I was going to continue to farm it. And I've thought of that. That it was part of the, when you plan, you look at a lot of different alternatives. You say, what could I be doing with this property to make it worthwhile? And it occurred to me that it was so close to the river that it was in the best interest, long-term. I'm 70. I am thinking about for my son and what kind of future. And frankly, I've worked my whole life in conservation. I'm not in the business of making those kinds of mistakes. To tell you the truth, and you know this, I won a national award based on this plan. Isn't that funny? I can't get the plan done. But based on the idea that I could bring an income stream to a small farm that would, and at the same time, conserve the natural resources and enhance them and continue to farm all the little spaces on our little farm. And it is a little farm. It might seem big, but it's little.
Okay. So, I only have one more comment then. Mr. Sheehan has provided us with a summary of this application, which I've not had a time to review. I believe you would have sent that to the applicant as well.
Yeah, I have one here I can give, but I just had one comment at the end, my conclusions that I can just make right now.
Yeah, so anyway, I believe that for the 8th, they should be able to respond to
Yes.
your findings.
Yeah, I just finished that today, but I can definitely send it over to them. But I'll just make, should I make my finding comment now or wait till?
Sure.
It's just quick. This is the first time I've been to the site. I drove by today just because I wanted to check it out, not from Google Earth or anything like that. And the only thing, if I have my location right, is that when you go down North Carver Road, you look to the left, according to the zoning bylaws, the solar zoning bylaws, it can't be in view of right-of-ways. And when you're driving down the street and you look to the left, there is like an existing buffer there of trees, but you can see through the trees to where I think the solar farmers, the two first sites are going to be. And according to the zoning bylaws, it can't be in view of right away. So it's like partially covered by the buffer, but not totally. So yeah, so when you drive around here, you can see through here. There's like some vegetative trees right here, but you can see through it. So it's like partially.
We would be putting shielding up. I mean,
Yeah.
we fully intended to do that. In fact, actually, in the blueberry patch, what we've talked about doing is moving our blueberry bushes outside the fence.
Right.
And continue to allow our neighbors to come in and pick blueberries. I mean,
Right.
We would fully expect to shield.
Yeah.
I didn't expect not to.
Yeah, no, that was the only comment. I could have
Uh-huh.
missed that when I was going over the site plan, but that was the only comment that I have when I drove by today. That was the one thing that I saw and went through was that you can partially see it. It wasn't a huge deal, but I just wanted to make that comment. But yes, I definitely 100% believe that you would put a shield there.
Yeah, we would.
Mr. Buckland, do you have any comments you care to make at this point?
No, I think Aaron has covered what we discussed in office.
Any other comments from the board before I invite the public to speak?
None.
Hearing none and seeing none, thank you. I will invite the public to speak, and if they have questions of you, they will ask them through me, and I will turn to you all and give you the opportunity to answer if you so wish. Or you may want to get back to us, or you may decline, whatever you want to do, all right? Okay, the public hearing, I'm sorry, do I need to open the public hearing? It's already open, isn't it?
I don't believe so.
Yes. Yes, this is a continued public hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
open?
Yeah.
Okay, so anyone in the audience care to speak to the 44 North Carver Road solar project? Ms. Wertz? Yeah.
You're a gentleman. This is, I'm asking this specific to this project, but it really applies to all the projects we're looking at. We're learning as a town. And I want to go back to the noise measurement again. And what I don't know is, when we looked at, I did not look at your plans, but as I reviewed several other plans, when they talk about the noise level, they're usually talking about from one inverter or one transformer area. And I think we really need to understand how many transformers and how many inverters are there, because each one of them are giving off a noise level, and it's just not that noise level, but the harmonics. And it's at the harmonics level where it's not about so much about a physical noise as the vibrations that are keeping people awake and really messing with how their brains are working sometimes. And those harmonics go on 24 hours a day. So I know you have a statement on noise here. I haven't seen it. I don't have the engineering education to evaluate it, but I would ask this board, through you, Richard, to ask that the noise evaluation that explain better on how it's used and how many units are actually generating noise. So that's it.
Thank you.
Can I address?
Would you care to respond?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we can show you.
If you talk, I'll point because you
There you go. Yeah, good point. So Bob will point out, we have just one location where we're going to have the three basically noise emitting equipment, which is our energy storage.
Bob, can you turn the chart just a little to the audience? The other way. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Michael.
It's okay. I could see it on the.
All right.
So all of our electric equipment, all the panels will feed into one central location, and that's where our concrete pad will be. That's where our transformer, all of our inverters, and our energy storage system will be. And so everything will be in the same location. So when we did that 300-foot analysis to the street, it was from this central location. And we won't have anything, throughout the array or anywhere else. Again, this being a small project, I've worked on projects where we've had 3, 4, 5 equipment pads. This one just has one.
And Ms. Wertz, please feel free to jump in. What I felt was more critical, she does talk about the harmonics, which I am just starting to understand a little bit, but more important was the fact that there are multiple inverters and there are multiple transformers. Typically, there's 2 or 3 step up in a row. I'm not sure, I haven't reviewed your schematics yet, but is there a cumulative effect, and therefore is it important for us to know the total number?
I'm not an audio engineer. I honestly do not have the expertise to answer that, and I'll look into that. I would say we do just have one transformer and one energy storage system. The way we're designing this, it'll actually, the inverters will be within the energy storage system. Just, again, being a small project, the way it's designed, it kind of comes pre-packaged. So it'll be within the container, but we can look at like amplifying effect of, I think
that would
8
be wise.
inverters here. Yeah, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Someone else from the public care to speak?
Annie Hayes.
Welcome, Ms.
evening.
Hayes. How
Thank
are you?
Good. I think you have the most compelling story for solar augmenting the family farm. My heart goes out to the family farm, and it seems like you're thoroughly transparent and you're not trying to make a story to cover something else. And I've seen that recently, for example, the arsenate-coated poles for the bogs. But I have questions, and I have a little bit of discomfort because relative to Mr. King's comment, I think the rivers, the waters are the most important resource we have.
I do too.
That and the forests. And I see developers time after time just trying to take a chip out of the regs here and there. And that's a concern because you chip here and then somebody else wants to chip there, et cetera, and you understand that. I also don't hear when you talk about, so that's one issue, but when you talk about the 8-foot screw, I don't hear what the fluctuating water table is. Do you have a way of measuring
This is a
that?
higher, it's a
I need you to direct your comments to me.
Oh, I'm sorry,
I'm
yes.
sorry, I can't allow debate.
I'm sorry, sure. I'm not debating, but yeah.
You
What
understand what I
is the fluctuating water table in this area where there's a 10-inch screw? I hear the depths of poles, but I don't often hear, I don't think I've ever heard, what that water table rising and falling does with relationship to the post pole screw.
Would you
Could I
care to
have-
respond?
I can tell you this, if we, that's one why the bog is poorly performing. The water table doesn't reach the bog. It's higher than the rest of our property. It's higher than the bog, the other bogs. I would say, I'd have to actually measure it, but I would say it's an easily 10 feet higher than, I mean, the way I would measure water, the water level is where the water is in the ditch of the bog beside it. And it's easily 10 feet above that.
Okay.
That's
You
a
wanna
quick and dirty. I mean, I
Yeah,
know
okay.
that's not the.
Would you also inquire about when we get these new intensive rainstorms that are going to continue to become more intense? That's going to change the water table. It's going to change the river bank. I was talking to some old school long-term construction people, and they were also talking about dams that are being deconstructed and how that allows for more water and rising of the banks. Is that something that you folks are taking into consideration as a board?
We consider the stormwater report that looks forward to 1, 5, 10, 100-year storm impacts.
What's 1, 5, 10?
A 1 year, well, a storm that happens every 1 year, a storm that happens every 5 years, a magnitude storm.
Yeah. But we've talked about the fact that that's historic. That's not futuristic, and we're really in the beginning of futuristic as these storms are changing in intensity. And as a planning board, I know that makes it very difficult, but I think it has to be addressed. And as I think I reported to the board that if the Army Corps of Engineers said that if they use the 100-year storm for the new levees in New Orleans, that those would have failed in Hurricane Ida, and it would have been worse results than Katrina. So I think all of this water information is very critical. I also know that, or I understand, and have spoken to the fact that the old cranberry bogs are well, let's say some of the family farms, and Ms. Rinta, you may, oops, would you ask for confirmation of this? That the new proprietary vines that are triple production of cranberries are edging out smaller farms. I don't know that this is a particular case, but that's part of the story that we know in Wareham now. And these proprietary vines are ocean spray, they're high yield, and they require 20-year contracts and all of that. So no sharing, no DNA, passing back and forth. So that's part of the story right now as well.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Annie.
Can I address that?
You may.
I don't disagree with you about the water. That's actually a big concern of mine as well. And again, as a planner, and I've done a lot of cranberry plans, that's what I primarily have done for 20 years. I've been working on cranberry bogs, writing plans for improvements. And one of the most difficult things we have to do is, because of climate change, making water control structures larger, because there's a larger flow of water, there's a larger stormwater flow coming off the roads and impervious surfaces. Part of the reason that I believe that this is a good use for this particular riverfront bog is because we will not lose any flood storage capacity. In fact, again, as I would say, that I am fully entitled to farm that as I choose. But I know that this is a better use of this particular property, of that particular piece of property. Now, that aside, as far as the varieties of cranberries, I have had the opportunity, and we've put in a little bit of hybrids, but frankly, they don't work for everybody. If you don't have the sand and the water to support them, then they don't work for everybody. And not everybody is making that conversion, and that is not what's edging out the cranberry business. Frankly, there's fruit and juice coming in from all over the world. I don't disparage anybody who puts in the hybrids, but I know they're not right for me. They're not right for me because they take more inputs, they take more sand, they take more fertilizer, they take more of everything. So the risk is ratcheted up. And frankly, I believe we have heritage varieties. We grow early blacks in house mostly. We have a few Stevens, but those aren't the super hybrids. And I believe that long-term, particularly in foreign markets, they're more desirable because, frankly, the smaller berries have a better health benefit than the larger berries. And it's what I choose, it's what we've chosen to grow. We've chosen to stay with our heritage varieties because we believe that they have a marketable advantage long-term. And again, that's the difference between short-term and long-term. It's sort of like you put another cow on the common. If we're in oversupply, what is the point of spending a small fortune in growing hybrids that you can't sell? So our intent is to continue farming what we farm. My son said something very encouraging to me today. It wasn't today, it was a couple of days ago. He said, "Mom, we're not a cranberry operation, we're a cranberry farm." And that's what we are. I'm not A.D. Makepeace, and I'm not a big anything. I'm a small family farm.
Thank you, Annie.
Would you tell her that I really appreciate her comment?
Thank you.
Any other general comment from the public? Mr. Manise. Oh, I'm sorry, that's Eric. I apologize.
Eric Lentilla, Squirrel Island Road. I hope it works for you. I do have a question, if they can elaborate, coming back to the recycling. Can they elaborate a little more on 20 years, what's going to happen? What's the plan?
Before we go there, and I haven't read, is in the site plan, is there a decommissioning plan? The decommissioning plan is documented. That's a requirement of the site plan review process. I haven't reviewed it per se. There's also a requirement for a bond in case the energy company goes away, that the town will have available resources to do the decommissioning. You can read the details of that plan yourself.
Yeah, I do hope the plan does, I mean, in 20 years, what's the first step? I'm hoping this is in the plan, because I keep thinking all these places in 20 years, all of a sudden, it's going to hit the fan. And no, I'm just wondering, you know, where's it all going to go? I mean, are these in the plans? I will look, but even those I've looked, I've never seen those answers to that question. I mean, it's.
So, Mr. Untitled, I've reviewed the plan, which is why I've asked the applicant some questions. None of the decommissioning plans that I've reviewed have a lot of detail about what's going to happen 20 years from now. And that's why we're probing. So that's a legitimate concern, but I don't think anybody really knows. Right now, landfill is an option, and they are legally allowed to go into a landfill. But we're hoping that we can establish some criteria for future. The other thing that I'll note, and it's something the Solar Bylaw Committee may take up, is that each of the decommissioning plans that we get has a financial projection, and none of them are the same. So we need to probably establish some consistency for that. But right now, all these, I'll let you speak in a second, or Mr. Swenson will. But right now, we're not having a lot of detail provided to us about what's going to happen.
That's my point.
So I'm agreeing with you. That's
my
the
point.
case.
Because it's something that I would just think should be addressed from now on as these come forward, a little more detail. I mean, it's not like the nuclear waste problem. We create that energy, and what do we do with the waste? We're going to have a lot of waste in 20 years. But I would think that we're putting up funds aside if things go bankrupt or whatever. But I think the bigger question, there should be more questions in relation to where this stuff is really going to go, and is it recyclable? Again, we're avoiding a lot of those questions. And this is a bigger, it's a bigger question I'm coming down with. What I'm saying is we should answer that more, or question it more and more as we look at these proposals. We keep kind of, okay, we'll figure it out in 20 years. That's not the way to do it. Anyhow, it's food for thought, food for thought.
Point taken. Thank you very much. Any other public comment on the 44 North Carver Road project? Seeing none, I will accept a motion to continue this public hearing to 11/8.
So moved.
I have two motions to move it to 11/8.
Then I'll second.
And I have a second. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Baptiste? Mr. Corbett?
Aye.
Mr. Schultz?
Aye.
Mr. Swenson votes aye, 5-0-0. We will continue this to 11/18. Could I ask? 11/8, excuse me. Could I have one of you sign this for me, please? Okay, moving right along. We have new public hearings tonight. The first one is for definitive subdivision plan 32-21. Thank you very much. RESI LLC at 3642 and 48 Robinwood Road, map 4, lots A, B, and C, 7-lot subdivision. For the general public, this is similar to a site plan review. This project came before this planning board, I'm gonna guess right now, I don't have a date, 6 months ago, as a preliminary subdivision plan where it was reviewed with us. We had some questions, they had some answered. We approved the subdivision plan. We may or may not have had a public hearing at that time. We tended to do that now and then, even though we aren't required to, if I'm correct. Mr. Rowley, is that right? But now we're doing a definitive subdivision plan, and a public hearing is required.
Yes. Public hearings do not take place for preliminary plans. Preliminaries are required for a commercial development or commercial subdivision. They are not required for a residential. It's at the option of the applicant.
Okay. So we'll hear from the applicant, and then we'll hear from the board with any questions or comments they may have. Then at that point, and Mr. Rowley and Mr. Buckland and Mr. Shaheen, and at that point, we'll open it up to the public for comment.
Sorry, Mr. King, I know you had it on the screen, so
What's that?
I know you had it on the screen. so
Thank
I'll
you.
grab one.
Yeah, I'm all right on the screen.
You good? Everyone have one? We have an extra? Right here.
Sure.
Just leave it right there. Oh, I'm sorry. Hand me the extra. And people in the public that wish to see one, there will be one on this table over here. Is that all right?
I've got some.
So this is Maritime Haven, definitive subdivision plan at Robinwood Road in Wareham, Mass. I will turn it over to you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Bob Rogers, GAF Engineering. With me is EJ Lanny and Tom Gay, and Tom would be starting off.
Okay.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having us tonight. Tom Gay from Gay & Gay. Tonight we have before you a 7-lot definitive subdivision plan. We actually have been working on this for quite some time now. Back in May, we reached out and had in a butter meeting, tried to get in touch with the neighbors and really get a sense of what they had questions on with respect to this proposed development. So we took in some of their considerations in developing this plan and, hope that the board is pleased with what we're presenting you tonight. This is an R43 zone, so the lots are 43,000 square feet with 180 feet of frontage. The current parcel, as it historically exists, is 3 contiguous lots that total a little over 8 acres, 8.3 acres. It has a 7-bedroom main house and a 1-bedroom, 3-car garage carriage house on the property currently. We're proposing 7 conforming lots that will be serviced by town water and sewer with a private road that we're proposing to have remain private in perpetuity, as well as underground utilities. So we're really trying to develop this property to have as minimal impact on the surrounding area, keep open space as it currently is, and really construct something that the town of Wareham will be proud of and will be a great addition to the community. With respect to our waivers, we have pretty minimal waivers. I think there's 4 that have to do with some curbing and design specs that Bob can definitely get into in more detail. But that's the project in a nutshell, and Bob can really go through the tech specs. We have Dario from Dario Designs here. He was the architect who put together a lot of these great visuals that we'll try to have on these boards here that show renderings of the actual projected homes on the site. So you'll see that it is a high-end community that we're trying to build here. The homes are going to be beautiful, and really we tried to design it to maximize views, line of sights, not only for the people that live or will live in this neighborhood, but for the surrounding abutters as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Bob to go through this plan technically, and then we can try and show you some of the visuals of the renderings that Dario put together.
Mr. Chairman. So Tom covered a lot of the bases. There's not a lot of moving parts to this. The dead-end road is 20 feet wide. It's paved, which was one of the recommendations that we took from the planning board through the preliminary process. We have availability of municipal water and sewer. That dead-end road is 650 feet long, driving around the cul-de-sac. So it's just a little over 500 feet long from Robinwood. We have country drainage, if you will, which Mr. Rowley will be reviewing. So our road cross pitches to the north, if you will, and there's a water quality swale, and it leads to a rain garden for water quality aspect. This subdivision is entirely within land subject to coastal storm flowage. So we have a responsibility to make sure that we don't put any additional storm water to Robinwood Road and to the abutters, but there's no prohibition on the increase in runoff to a resource area. So the stormwater management calculations that we've provided are limited to the water quality aspects, and we would address any of Mr. Rowley's concerns in the future.
forgive my naivete, but explain that to me about, to a resource area.
Sure. So the Massachusetts DEP stormwater management standards are included, well, they're adopted by the town of Wareham and enforced through the planning board as well as the Conservation Commission. And so when you're in a situation of land subject to coastal storm flowage, and we're in flood zones with that, in this case are as high as velocity zone 18. So, in a major rainfall event, the amount of water that goes to Buzzards Bay or Buzzards Bay coming onto the property means that you don't have to try to create storage volume that would, prevent an increase in peak rate or volume to the resource area. Of course, we have a responsibility to the property lines and to not put any additional into Robinwood Road, which, there's a profile. The drainage is best reviewed on sheet 5 of 8, and there's a road profile. And so it clearly shows that we're coming in off of Robinwood Road, and we have a little bit of fill to make a nice intersection grade. And so there's absolutely no chance of us putting any water onto Robinwood Road. And then we have a limited proposed grading for these individual lots. So all the homes on the property need to be compliant with the building code with respect to the flood zone regulations. And so you'll have 7 homes on 1-acre lots that will be on flood compliant foundations with a pad that's 2 foot above the ground around them. And we've designed roof infiltration units for the homes. But essentially, there would still be a lot of yard area remaining, which would be used as storage to protect the abutting properties. And so all of those things are going to be reviewed by Mr. Rowley.
Mr. Rowley, while we're on this topic, is there any comment you care to make that would make this board's life a little easier in understanding this?
Well, first, I haven't received authorization yet to actually do the review, so that I need to get. But having looked at the plan in order to prepare the cost estimate, there were a couple of things that came to my mind. And Mr. Rogers was talking about the stormwater and so forth, that you're in a coastal zone, so you're not too concerned about flooding of adjacent properties when you're in that sort of a situation. In looking at the plan, and the first thing that I did was look at the method of disposal of the stormwater off the street. I have a concern about it because it's built sort of like a bathtub. The only thing that is allowing the water to go out is through the bottom. It's above what they have identified as the mean low water elevation, which is about low tide, you might say. But if that fails and you have a storm, that water's going to back up to the low point in the road profile. So I would suggest that instead of having that kind of a drainage system, because we don't have to worry about the flooding of adjacent lands, because it's in the area which is subject to coastal storm flowage, they could accomplish the same thing with trenches along the edges of the road, which would allow the surface runoff from the road to go immediately into that stone, and it would be a much smaller volume over a larger area. It would be a simpler design. You don't have to worry about a low point that could collect the water like a puddle, freeze in the wintertime, and then everybody be exasperated because they can't get rid of the water. So when I do the plan, I'm going to mention that. But does that answer your question?
It does.
Make it clearer for other people?
It made it clear for me. All right, thank you. All right,
Okay.
please.
Certainly. Similar to the last project, this requires a filing with the Conservation Commission, and so we have not yet filed a notice of intent. I think I stated No, I probably didn't state this the first public hearing, but there's probably a similar comment to the last project, that we appreciate that Mr. Rowley has to perform his review, and oftentimes, and not unreasonably, we have to make changes in order to satisfy his concerns. You know, we did provide the funding and the W-9 for his review, so I think he may just be asking for a vote from the board to authorize him to initiate the work, which, you know, this is the first night that we're in position to do that. So I think, respectfully, we would still like to have seen a first review from him before we finalize the submission of the notice of intent.
Would you be comfortable at this point, this board authorizing Mr. Rowley to move forward and then continuing until our next meeting in November?
Yes, absolutely. And of course, we're very interested to hear any comments from the neighbors.
Sure. Mr. Buckland, are you prepared for the board to authorize the creation of a 53G account for Mr. Rowley to initiate his review?
I'm not aware of the check in the file covering the cost of the 53G account. Assuming that it's in there, that would be fine. We could approve Mr. Rowley to proceed with his review.
Yes, Ken, I had hand-delivered it to you and said hi to you and Sonia a couple of weeks ago. And that was the purpose of my visit, was to deliver the check. So,
All right, I don't have a recollection of that.
I'm sure he'll find
it's in the file. We can proceed with Mr. Rowley doing his review.
Do we need the board to vote on that, Ken?
You can if you want.
I think we will. I'd entertain a motion to authorize Mr. Buckland to work with the applicant to create a 53G account, to fund that account, and let Mr. Rowley initiate his work.
So move.
Second.
So I have a motion by Mr. King and a second by Mr. Corbett. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Baptiste?
Aye.
Mr. Corbett?
Aye.
Mr. Schultz?
Aye.
Mr. Swenson votes aye, 5-0-0. Okay,
So, Mr. Chairman, I don't personally have anything further, and so, but we do have the architect here, Dario. If you would like to have him say a few words, then I can have him sit here and I can point as he directs me.
that'd be fine, and then I will ask each board member if they have any questions, and then we'll go to the public.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Chair.
Do I have to sit here?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't point. Hard for me not to point. Well, thank you for having me here. I'm Dario DeMar with Dario Designs. And I think, yeah. I guess if everybody can see just the fundamental site plan, actually, I'm going to back up one step and talk about the size of the lots, because that was a big deal. Let me just grab it. So the client really wanted to, I'll put in quotes, kind of do the right thing here. So one of the first things we looked at was the density of this area. And when we counted up the lots within a certain radius closest to us, on the bottom line on the right-hand side, and I'm going to ask you, I can't read the number from here, but we're out of, within 1,000 feet, and I'll come back in a second. There's only 7 lots bigger than these lots, and every other lot is more in the 7,000 square foot range, and these are 43,000 square feet per lot. So it gave us a lot less density, and you can see it comparatively with all the lots around it. So that was a big deal, to not really overcrowd or build out the neighborhood to the really maximum capacity compared to what was around it. And then another big concern was trying to get views of the ocean. So we did space the houses pretty far apart. additionally, and I guess if you want to get the color,
We're just going to flip this around, Ariel.
okay, that's some of the houses. That's just a shot from the ocean. So, yeah, so that's that drawing. I don't know if you guys can see that, but that's kind of what we're looking at. The houses are about 3,200 square feet. They're 4 bedrooms, 2-car garage, and there's 7 of them. We will have in some areas, as was mentioned, we'll be building in velocity zones, so there'll be the stilt construction. And in other areas in the back, we may not need to do that because we're up higher. So that's, I think I can leave that there, so you folks can see that. And then as far as how they lay out,
Are all 7 lots in the high velocity zone?
no. No, they vary from how, and then you put it up, you guys. This is kind of a better view of the whole development, because then you can see all the houses, kind of 3-dimensional, wrapping around the cul-de-sac. And basically, they're all looking at the ocean, because the ocean's there. So that was a big deal to make sure the sight lines worked. And then running through the center of the property is just our road and then a cul-de-sac. They would all have access to the ocean, and we're looking at a dock to be shared. So they're all over the acre. They all have the minimum frontage requirements. And as far as the layout, everything within the houses and the lots themselves are all, for a better choice of words, by right. Everything just complies with all the codes and areas and setbacks and frontage requirements. The other thing that was important to us was not to have, when you do go into the sites, you can see there's a lot of curved drives entering the houses. And that's, again, for 2 reasons. You don't want to just have the drive looking straight at the house if we can avoid it. So we're going to put vegetation around the drives, but also even pulling in and out of the drives, you won't see the lights from the cars as much, even within this, never mind on Robinwood, where you wouldn't really see them at all. But so everything was kind of curved just to make it softer and a little better living. And other than that, they're pretty high quality homes. There's nothing here that we've really cut back on when it came to just what I would call trying to do the right thing, and that was really per their direction. The total amount of cars here, which is one other thing that was kind of important, was we have 7 houses with 2-car garages, so there'd be a total of 14 cars, assuming each guy at least had 2 cars. And that's about it.
Yeah, so, I mean, that kind of pins down the design and the vision, and we thought it was very important for you to see these visuals, and, you know, we're really trying to put our best foot forward with the town and the neighbors, and really build something, develop something that, you know, hopefully the town of Wareham will be proud of, and you know, maybe other developers will see something like this, and, you know, it won't be the first time that we're here for it. But we welcome any questions you have.
Mr. Corbett, I'll start with you.
The only concern is the water retention. I mean, it's sea level, you have the ocean right there. That's my main concern.
Mr. Scholes?
The applicant is requesting 4 waivers. I believe from previous discussions, nothing in the bylaws allows us to grant those waivers. So
I'm not sure on that, and that's a question I was going to make. I was under the impression that as a subdivision, we can. Mr. Rowley,
That's
can you
correct.
help me here?
Yeah, Chapter 41, as well as your own rules and regulations, allow you to grant waivers in certain instances. You have to look at what they are, what they're requesting, what the standard is that's in the bylaw, and what they want to go to. Then you vote on each one. But you have the authorization under
Okay,
subdivision.
so that was my
control.
first question.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll have to review each of those. 3 of the waivers were based on the contention that the applicant that they will be held private in perpetuity, the land. I believe that the rule against perpetuities, which is a legal rule in common law, prevents people from using legal instruments to create a perpetuity. I have to get more information for that, but I don't believe that the applicant can guarantee that this land will be held private in perpetuity.
With respect to roadways in public or private ways, your decision and your conditions get recorded. It's an element. So the rule of perpetuities is typically like a 20-year rule.
21 years after the death of the, yeah.
Yep. So that would be with respect to like each individual lot, but with the roadway, it's a different process. And it doesn't, by us saying that the concept is for this to remain a private neighborhood for forever, is subject to time and what happens in the going forward.
Therefore, granting waivers based on that would be a concern to me. I'm just giving you.
No,
my
yep,
feedback.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay, so that's my feedback, and we need to discuss. I didn't realize we could even grant the waiver. And then my last comment is you have a very beautiful rendering there, and it may be beyond our scope, but I believe that pier dock represents a substantial taking of public waterways. And I'm sure the Conservation Commission, I think, who regulates that, may comment on that. But that's a substantial taking of a public waterway.
Well, we're still working on that, and so we obviously we would have to file with the Conservation Commission and then the Chapter 91.
I gave you my comments, you asked for feedback, that's what I gave you.
Yeah, no,
and I think it's beautiful, everything looks beautiful. I have no comment on the design. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Baptiste?
Happy as a clam.
You good? Good. Mr. King? I have no comments at this time. I'm anxious to see Mr. Rowley's work, which will be the crux of this board's interest, I believe. Any other comments from the applicant before I open it up to the public? Please.
Speak briefly to the dock.
I would not.
Yeah, so the pier and dock, that's a conservation permitting issue. You know, it's with the reason we have it in the rendering, it's, you know, within the vision of what we hope for in a sense, but it's up for, you know, a board other than the planning board to kind of tell us what we can and can't do with that.
And there's a dock on each side of us, is all I was gonna say. So we're shouldered by two docks very close to ours, and we would be within the setbacks of those, which would be allowable. So it's both sides of the property. It's certainly not precedence, it's basically fitting in with the neighborhood.
Have you scheduled your Conservation Commission initial meeting yet?
No, sir.
All right.
Richard, I have one question and
Of
just a
course,
comment,
Mr. Rowley.
general comment. Bob, what's the frontage on lot 49?
My eyes, Charlie. So on Robinwood itself, it's got 165, and then it, you know, another 30, well, the 30-foot radius, another 40 something odd feet, 93 on Maritime. It's more than 180 when you combine with the two streets.
So
with the corner
my
lot.
point in asking is that this is one of those situations where you've got a corner lot, and the regulations say that you can include, as a part of the frontage, the distance from where the curve starts to the point of intersection for the two sidelines of the lot. So if you look at that particular lot, you've got 121.93, you've got 44.05, so that's only about 165, so you need another 15 feet. But if you go from the end of that 44.05 line, what is the tangent line of the curve, that's an additional 30.67. So the frontage is covered, but you don't see it on the plan because the tangent for that curve isn't shown. It's a mathematical thing, but it's in your regulation to allow.
So show the tangent
So it's
on the
there.
plan. Would you like the tangent shown on the plan for calculation?
If Bob wants to confirm what that tangent is,
Yeah.
that would be helpful. It's not essential. The information is there in order to compute it, but
Charlie, to make sure I understand, you're saying that we got 165 on a straight line, and then half the radius is half of 30 is 15.
if it were a right angle, the tangent would be 30 feet.
Yeah, understood.
This is a little bit more, it opens up a little bit, so
Yep.
the tangent's a little longer than 30 feet.
And he gets half of that.
Well, he gets to 30 feet,
Okay.
so he's got more than the frontage, but I just wanted to point out, if you look at it and you just add up the numbers, you're gonna say, where is the 180? It's there.
Understood.
And just the other comment that, with respect to that, the pier, it does require conservation approval, it does require getting a Chapter 91 license from the state, as well as a permit from the Corps of Engineers. When the application is submitted to DEP and to the Conservation Commission for the license, you will get a copy of that. You will have the opportunity at that time, if you wish to make comments to the Conservation Commission, that you can. If memory serves me correct, you can even hold your own public hearing on it if you want to, but that's down the road.
Right.
And the last comment was that specifically, the only lots that require the frontage to be on that street are lots 50, 51, and 53. I'm sorry, 52 and 53. So you've got potentially 3 lots that do not require the road to be built in order to be able to build on them. And that would be 48, 49, and 54. Because you've got the frontage on Robinwood Road.
And 50, 51, 52, and 53.
They require Maritime Road for the frontage. So you're really looking at the subdivision for those 4 lots. Yeah.
Is it, as we approach subdivision rules and regulations, we should approach them only against those 4 lots?
No, approach the whole thing as it's shown on the plan. Where it will come into effect will be when they get to the point of actually developing a covenant for the roadway construction. The only thing that they need to covenant is the lots that actually require Maritime Road for
Understood.
So
for
to
frontage.
clarify what you just said, Lot 49 requires Maritime Road as well.
No, it doesn't, because as I explained with the frontage in that tangent, it has the frontage on Robinwood Road when you consider that. You don't go around
But
the
if
corner.
Maritime Road is not built, the tangent won't be there.
It will be under a covenant, and it would have the frontage by virtue of the tangent distance there. That's a good point, though, Kyle. We'll double check that to be sure.
Oh, you're saying it would go all the way out to the middle of Maritime, what's shown as Maritime Road?
No, it's a different thing, and I don't need to take up the board's time on it now, right now, but we can go that further.
Well, then we need to understand, is it 4 lots or 3 lots that we need to?
I'll verify that for you, but if it should not be built, then you're looking at a different thing.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Buckland, was that you?
I just wanted to point out that there is a lot of written testimony that has been submitted to the office. It's in the file. You'll want to go to read through those comments as well as get the testimony here at the public hearing. And one of a couple of the other things I wanted to ask was that it be clear where the access easement is to the waterfront through the subdivision. It wasn't very easily read as to where the access easement lay in the subdivision. And lastly, that the force main, I'd like to know where it actually connects to the sewer, how far down the road, and what off-site impacts there are as a result of the construction of the force main.
So the question, I'm going to try to remember, there is an easement allowing all 7 lots access to the beach?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. If you look at page 4 of 8, there's a 20-foot easement that is on Lot 52 that is parallel to the lot line of Lot 53. And so it goes from the cul-de-sac down to the existing retaining wall, and then it goes north all along that retaining wall, so that there would be pedestrian access for each of the landowners to the beach. It's a little bit of a busy plan with all the setbacks and so forth, so, but that is on the plans. So it's 10 feet wide along the existing seawall, but it's 20 feet wide to get there from the cul-de-sac.
I see it. And the sewer hookup question?
So the sewer, we've been coordinating with Guy Campina and the sewer commissioners. The sewer commissioners did vote to designate the amount of flow that's necessary for this subdivision. There's a plan to do individual grinder pumps for the 7 homes and to have a force main, which would be installed by directional drilling. And it takes a little bit of a circuitous route, but it's about 1,500 feet, which is the stated length in the planning board's regulations. If sewer is available and it's within 1,500 feet, you're directed to tie into that. And so, trying to think of the Nanamit Street and Woodbury, I want to say, but it's to the east. I'm sorry, it's to the west. It's to the west, and I don't know if you've received any written comments from the sewer department or onset water or any of the other municipal departments. We'd certainly like to receive copies of the written correspondence from the abutters and any of the interested, anyone who's submitted.
So, Mr. Buckland, you said you have received citizens' comments. Have you received, and they're not posted yet, have you received comment from Mr. Campina in the sewer department?
No, I have not. And we need to have a response from the Board of Health as well, too. We have received something from the onset water department.
So I anticipate what you do have will be posted?
That's correct.
Is that posted on the website as part of the documents for the project?
Right. Okay, well, Mr. Buckland, I think you had one other comment I've neglected to have responded?
No, you covered it.
Okay. To the board, any other comments before we move on? Okay, seeing and hearing none, I'll open this for a public hearing. Most of the people that have spoken tonight already at public hearing know the rules that we try to operate under, but for those of you that are here for this, all comments will be directed to the board and this chair. All questions will come to the chair, and the applicant will be given the opportunity to answer those questions if he so desires. I ask the public that are speaking to keep their comments to 3 minutes, and people that are speaking that on topics that have already been addressed by previous speakers, please keep that in mind so we can be productive. If we have good information, and the 3 minutes is a guideline, but I would ask you to please be brief, quick, and to the point. That being said, we'll take comments from the public at this point. Please come forward and tell us who you are. Good evening.
I'm Marlene Aaron. I live at 32 Robinwood Road.
You need to have a seat, because you got to speak in the mic.
Okay.
Have a seat.
Okay. My name is Marlene Aaron, and I live at 32 Robinwood Road, which is that whole top line. I am the abutter on the whole north, all of it. Okay. And my husband, who's here, Robert. Hold on for 1 sec. Okay. I have many questions and concerns, and I'm interested in hearing about our rights as 30-year residents on Robinwood Road and Sias Point before that. We are the people who are most adversely affected by this new development. My concerns are the density of the project. It does not fit into the existing neighborhood. The street lots seem to have homes 3 to 4 times the size of my neighbors who are on Robinwood. And I ask, is this good planning? Is there something that can be done to eliminate? They're going to be eyesores. They're 35 feet, and my neighbors have ranches. The increased traffic on a poorly maintained road, another concern. How will more traffic affect the quality of life and safety? We live with potholes, that's no secret. No one has been able to tell me, is this a private way or a public way? Can I get a copy of the traffic study? Did they do a traffic study? When was it done? In the wintertime or in the summertime? What is the additional projection of traffic during construction for a new road, sewer connection, drainage, utilities, site work, landscaping, foundations, construction vehicles on a very narrow road with some areas that only one car can pass? How will flatbeds and other vehicles maneuver the road without blocking access for residents, emergency vehicles, and fire trucks? Can time constraints be put on Maritime, Haven construction vehicles so that they can't be coming up and down the road all day long? Safety of the residents should be the biggest concern. Many of my neighbors walk, jog, ride bicycles, including my husband who's in his 80s. Baby carriages, there are no sidewalks. Public safety must be addressed. More driveways entering directly into Robinwood is going to be very problematic. If you look at one of these plans, and you can see the intersection of Forest, Power, and Robinwood, the top lot doesn't look like it goes onto the cul-de-sac. It looks like it's directing, right into that dangerous intersection. I think it's going to be really a big problem. And I would suggest that all the lots go onto the road that they're building, so one car at a time enters Robinwood, not one from the cul-de-sac and 2 or 3 from the other lots. I think that that's really important. Can the planning board ask for mitigation money for the additional tear of Robinwood Road? Can we get a new road from the developers that seem to be making a very big profit and leaving us with a mess? Regarding noise, can we get a waiver to have construction start at 8:30 for construction? My master bedroom happens to be right closest to the water. None of these plans show my house. So am I going to have construction right under my, window? A lot of us are retired and older. We don't get up at 7 o'clock. Are there laws controlling decibel levels and the placement for mechanical equipment such as generators, elevators, HVAC systems? Here's one other thing. They don't show my solar array. My husband put $125,000 into a brand new, all permitted solar array, and it's on the property line. Is a 35-foot house going to be blocking my sun and impeding the production of my solar? They don't have any of that. Are they required to do a study to show me that they're not going to block my solar? Do I have to pay for that? I strongly object to the first waiver regarding a study that will give us more information about stormwater. Maybe you don't have concern. I have a lot of concern. That's my driveway that, has a low level at the beginning of it. And am I going to get flooded? Is 7 to 8 acres of stormwater going to be dumped onto my property? Am I not going to be able to leave my property? I'm very concerned about that. Speaking of ponds, there was a pond that was between my house and the Friary that I believe was filled in illegally, not by these people, by the Friars. And if you look at the deed, previous deed, it shows that the northwest boundary was a guzzle or a creek. So they should have known that there was water between the properties. It was right on the deed. And during due diligence and a title search, this would have come up. So if that was filled in illegally, do I have the right? Do you have the right to ask them to put it back? You know, don't laugh, but there were bullfrogs, and, you know, we heard them every night. You know, there was wildlife there. It's gone, and you know what, as a good neighbor, I heard the beep, beep, beep. I didn't say anything, because by the time I figured out what was going on, everything was dead. They had already filled it in. They flagged wetlands February 12th. Is that normal? Can you see a wetland, can you see the land in the middle of winter? Maybe the answer is yes, but I don't know if February 12th was one of the big storms or not. You know, were there spotted turtles hibernating in the winter? I don't know. You know, so these are questions probably for conservation. Here comes another big one. Now, because of COVID, a lot of people are paying big money to rent vacation rentals. What's to stop somebody, an investor, from buying that property and every week having people party and have a good time and run it as a business? Is there anything in our bylaws that stop people from using a residential home as a business? You know, this is right next to my master bedroom. I oppose the developers skirting building sidewalks. It's another safety thing. And it seems just to be a request for some financial relief, nothing more. They don't want to do sidewalks. Regarding the trees, yes, I'm very concerned. The trees block my vision of all that's going to be built there. And it says something about the trees, you know, practical. Who determines practical? Where's the tree warden? Can I meet with the developers and the tree warden? And can we talk about what's going to come down? There's tons of wildlife. Everything, you know, lives in those trees and the shrubs and between the two properties. So I asked the planning board to try to consider less homes, look at the drainage very carefully, look at the placement of the homes, consider replacement of a pond. Is a pond or a new retention pond better than a rain garden? I'm not familiar with this rain garden, and I don't know. I mean, it does talk about, you know, somebody has to maintain it through perpetuity. Who's going to police that? I would like to invite the planning board to my home next Sunday, 2 o'clock, Monday, 2 o'clock, whenever people are available. You're looking at a plan. I want you to look at the reality of what you're going to be voting on to see the impact of my neighbors who have come to my house for 2 Sundays, and I'm not just speaking for myself. Yes, I have the biggest impact, but they're here tonight and they said, Marlene, get up there and do it for us. So that's why I did. I'm done.
Okay. Thank you for your feedback.
And I emailed this to Kenneth, so he has it too.
Anyone else to speak? Please come forward and identify yourself.
Hi, my name is Michael Bessie. I'm at 39 Robinwood Road. I have a few questions. Why are they asking for the waivers that they're asking for? Have they given a reason yet?
I haven't even read the waiver request yet, so.
Okay. Waivers, I did sit on the planning board back a large number of years ago. If they're asking for a financial reason for the waiver, I believe state law says there is no such thing as a financial reason for a waiver. Right, so you may want to look that up or take it under advisement. Robinwood Road is listed by the town as a public street. Does it make a difference what it is to the board, whether it's a private road or a town road? Because Robinwood Road is a private road, not a public street, for your information. In the 1994, I believe, there were some people down there trying to build on Robinwood Road on the edge, and it came before the planning board, I believe, and they determined that Robinwood Road is a private road. And since that time, there has been no town meeting or anything that any of us know of on Robinwood Road to show that there was a petition circulated and everyone signed it to make it a town road. So I can't find any place going that it's anything other than a private street.
Let me take a second. I'm going to turn, Charlie, I don't know if it's public or private, and we can clearly find out. Maybe you know, the applicant. Do you know?
It's labeled on the plan.
Pardon me?
It's labeled on the plan as a private way.
As a private way. And it's my understanding that in regard to subdivision off of a public road or a private road, I don't know of any distinction between the two.
Hey, what? I'm sorry.
Any distinction, any rules and regulations that are different based on it being a public or a private road?
There is no distinction. It's only in the character of the road and the quality of the road and whether or not it needs improvement to get access to the subdivision.
There is precedent for requiring certain improvements in certain cases for private as well as public roads. So in this particular case, you're talking about a private way, at least the way it's labeled on the plan. And since they affront it, they have the rights to use it and the right to improve it to the extent that they need to in accordance with the guidelines that you provide.
It says private on 4 of 8. It varies private. I didn't notice that when I did the
I didn't
review.
either.
I think it's only on plan 4.
Yep, I see it.
It's very small.
Page 4, it says variable width, private road.
Right, I saw that. That's what I noted. Yes, I see that.
Anyway, I think the answer to your question was, I want to be clear here, in terms of rules and regulations regarding what can go in a subdivision, I don't think there's a difference between a public and a private way, but as part of doing a subdivision, there are very clear requirements in terms of the condition of that road, whether it be public or private. Typically, we deal with a lot of private road issues in this situation, and it'll be addressed in this process as well. Thank you very much.
I've got more if you can. That shows wildlife in the area, and they bring down that area every year to,
Mind if I keep these and share them?
you can have, they're there to show you that the animal life in that area is definitely there. The dens for the foxes are in that designated wetland area up in the north corner. The road itself, I think you've got one there that shows 2 trucks trying to pass one another, and they had to stop. This goes on all the time on that road. There are places at 21 Robinwood Road where it comes down the hill and makes a sharp turn. Many of the people on that road have brought fear to them because they've ended up coming very close to head-on crashes on that road. If you walk the length of that road, you will notice that it is cracked the whole way. It has potholes in it. The width on that road appears to be something ranging from 30 feet to a little more. The tar runs 14 feet to 18 feet. Those do not, I don't believe those meet the town zoning. If we're bringing in all the heavy equipment, and I understand that the development has said that they may take up to 3 years to build. If we're gonna have 3 years of heavy traffic running over that road again, and then the increased traffic once it's finished, that road is never gonna make it. So I think what I'm asking for, I would like to see you come down and look at that road and agree that it is in bad shape and it is within your availability to list it as an unsafe way. If you list it as an unsafe way, you should be able to sit down with the developer and make whatever arrangements you feel comfortable with. We've already done it in Wareham in many areas. So if you could come down and look at it, like the lady said before me, it needs a lot of work.
I'm going to ask the applicant if they care to respond at this point regarding the condition of Robinwood Road, the condition of it during the construction, and the condition of it after you're done.
With respect to the current condition, as a private way, the homeowners along the way historically would have had the responsibility and obligation to maintain the way. This is a common problem throughout Massachusetts. Some of the cities and towns that I represent come across this quite often with private ways that are never formally accepted by a town or a city. And towns and cities a lot of times do step in and fix potholes, plow, take some responsibility. There is general laws with respect to the town's obligation to maintain a way after they have repaired it or improved it or maintained it through plowing or fixing potholes. So there's some historical back and forth with respect to it. However, with respect to a development such as this, you know, the impact and the historical significance of the road being in the condition it is now is not something that has been caused by the developer. And realistically, I understand when people think of construction, they think of, you know, constant traffic. That's not the case in reality. The case in reality is, you know, there's probably 20 Amazon trucks that drive down this road every day. There's people, Suarez, coming to pump septic systems every week. There's constant flow of heavy machinery and trucks to service homes. So to put the obligation onto a developer that's, you know, in the grand scheme of things is having a small impact on the roadway, I don't believe there would be precedent for that. You know, we'd be open to your discussions, and obviously there's more individuals here to speak tonight, but trying to, you know, fix an existing problem that was no fault of theirs, you know, I don't think at this point we're open to, you know, that discussion, but.
Can I sit there and use the mic?
Of course.
Real quick. I want to speak to the additional traffic as well. Currently, there's 7 beds and a caretaker's house, which is 7 complete individuals. So it's, you know, that site probably maxes out today at 8 cars. If we put 7 houses in with a 2-car garage, it goes from 8 to 14. So you're talking 6 extra cars on the street. You know, it's not 600 like a huge development. It's 6 cars, and if they go back and forth twice a day, each car, it's 12 trips on the road, which is not a huge burden, a ton of traffic. We do have one driveway that goes on to Robinwood. All the rest are shown going on to the cul-de-sac. So, and there are cases too, if they're being used just in the summer, and I own a house, I go with my wife, and we have 1 car per house. But if there's at least 2, it's 14 max on the site versus 8, which is there now. Just so everybody gets an idea of the magnitude of the additional traffic. And I know our goal during construction, selfishly, the quicker we get them built, the more money we make. Our intent is to try to do it all within a year. If it can't, we lose more money, because the quicker we get in, the quicker we get out. So even from a developer's perspective, the longer it takes, the more money it costs. So we want to be in, we want to be out, we want to do everything we can do to be the best neighbors we can. All of our staging, all of our construction, everything will be on site, so we won't have to put any vehicles in the road during construction, because we've got enough land where we can stage everything on site, which is another big deal, because a lot of times if you're building in tight areas, in downtowns, you end up needing traffic control, or you're building in the street. Of course, when we put the manhole in, there'll be that construction, but for the 99% of the construction is all on site. And we're trying to be sensitive to everybody, because we all have homes, we all have neighbors, and we want to fit in. But I think it's a big deal to understand the magnitude of this development, and it is about 75% less dense if you average up all the houses in the area, which is why we did that drawing, because we wanted to make sure we were much less dense than what's there.
Okay. Let me move on. Any other speakers? Please, sir, come forward, identify yourself. Oh, I'm sorry, sir, you'll be next, okay?
My name is Tom Glennon. I live on 9 Robinwood Road. And with respect to Attorney Gay, there'll be significant traffic impact from heavy construction equipment, because I hear the trucks rumble up the street, construction trucks, cement trucks, and so forth, and that was for, building maybe a garage somewhere, and maybe one home up in another cul-de-sac. There's going to be significant impact, and in particular, coming up off of Onset Road, all the way up Robinwood Road to finally get to where this location will be, and the trucks will have to turn. So I would really
recording in progress.
Request you folks to please come down and look at Robinwood Road. When I bought Robinwood Road years ago, it was never mentioned it's a private way. It was never mentioned that on a deed. It was never mentioned by anyone. And this is the first time I've heard that it's a private road. Now, I believe Mr. Rowley's name is on the plot plans in that area. All the different plots were laid out by his company. And would you know, through the chair, if Robinwood Road is a private or a public road? I'd be concerned.
We're looking at the plot plan here where it's called out as a private road.
So, once again, to say that the traffic will not impact the condition of that road, which is in terrible condition, as Mr. Bessie mentioned, it's in terrible condition now. The town comes in and puts down little patches that come out every winter. They don't fix it properly, and it's going to get torn up. And to think that a big development is going to just come in and tear it up even more and then walk away and say, oh, that's on you. That's not right. So that's my concern.
Thank you. Would you care to respond?
With respect to the traffic and the condition of the roadway, it's a pre-existing condition that, as we said before, it's something that is there. Daily impact from any vehicle will have an impact on it. it's something that we're cognizant of and we'll look at, but, you know, outside of that right now, I don't think we have too much more to comment on.
Sir, do you wanted to speak?
Mr. Chairman, through you to the board and Director Buckland, I'm Thomas Donahue of 12 Size Point Road. I'm here tonight with, I invited 75 of them, but a number of people from the Size Point Association and the Robin Hood neighborhood. So I'll be brief and just do the highlights of our concerns. If there was a traffic study that you're referring to on the traffic now about the sewage trucks and construction trucks available, could it be posted? We're concerned about the placement of the driveway on Robinwood and any, the main road and a driveway. There should be adequate site distance, et cetera, per DOT regulations. Sewer pump stations, will there be one on the property? The noise, the odors, the aesthetics, and on the 1,500 feet to Nanamet and Woodbury, are there any other stations on the way? I saw no snow storage and I saw no visitor parking. Everyone has visitors in the summertime, so I don't know where they're going to park on the property. The 7 driveways still stone, or are they going to be paved? On the waivers, the first one regarding the estimate the rate and volume of runoff prior to and after development. I don't know how the study missed it, but during any heavy rainstorm, the whole property is a swimming pool, and it stays that way for up to a week. Manny Battello, the abutting neighbor, has a file of color photos on it. We did drop off color photos, as the director said, they're in your file. And I have some color photos here. The place is a swimming pool for days. And I don't know where the pervious earth they're talking about in the stormwater study is, but this place stays wet for days after a good storm. In the last 30 days, there's been 2 storms that the place has been completely covered with water. And it's rainwater, not seawater. The waiver for the street trees, et cetera, I don't think I've seen a landscape plan yet, so I don't know if that should be denied now or continued to a landscape plan is submitted. And the next one is about the sidewalks. I live in a 93-unit freestanding house that we bought 3 years ago. And I looked at the plans beforehand. They had sidewalks everywhere. It was fantastic. We bought, we moved in. The planning board in that town let them take out 1,018 feet of sidewalks in return for a $46,000 donation to the tree account or something. So, I mean, I live it, but you walk down the street with the dog, you walk down the street to get the mail, and the cars are going by, so it's a hazard for the drivers going by. It's a hazard for children or anyone else. But it's a public safety issue. I don't know why sidewalks would be waived. And ironically, the sidewalks are not in the preliminary plan or the definitive plan that we're reviewing tonight. So the stormwater study is based on no sidewalks. So whatever happens with the sidewalks, the stormwater study has to change. So the basic big point is the flooding, rainwater, 2 big storms over the last month, 5 days of ponds on the property. And Manny Battello is here with numerous photos and a 30-year history of this chronic problem. So those are our bullet points, and we're happy to work with you, with them, for a quality project that fits the neighborhood.
Good, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
A response, if you care?
With respect to the waivers, we'll go through those in detail. It seems like at probably a subsequent hearing. But with respect to the sidewalks, it's impervious surface. So
a lot of times when you're in an area that has, whether you're wetlands or a flood zone or an area where there is water, pavement's impervious, you have to account for more runoff. A lot of times within those areas, conservation sometimes is happy to see less impervious than pervious. The other main point of it coming to a safety issue is the existing Robinwood Road. We have sidewalks that will be going to no sidewalk. So there's no sidewalk on Robinwood Road to connect to. So the goal is not necessarily safe on cost. It's an aesthetic issue to a degree. It's an impervious issue with respect to stormwater runoff and stormwater control. And it's designing it around the area where there aren't existing sidewalks.
I think your idea of going through the waivers in detail at a subsequent hearing is a good one. And I agree that the sidewalks is a very debatable issue. There are different sites, so. Anything else, sir?
Can I submit these photos?
Sure, sure. Mr. Bessie provided a lot of water photos as well, so you know. Any other comments? Please come forward.
Richard, could I make a comment about those photos?
Sure.
If it was possible for Mr. Bessie and the gentleman that just spoke to take a copy of this plan and just say what the location was for the photo and the direction it was taken, they would make an awful lot more sense in orientation to the site. So if they could stop off at Mr. Buckland's office just to mark that up for the town, I think it would be
Did you hear the
appropriate.
request?
Yes.
Would,
Manny and I can take care of that, yes.
all right,
I'll do that.
all right. I will,
I'm requesting Mr. Bessie, if he would be willing to also.
Mr. Bessie, are you still here? Can you coordinate and get your photos and the photos from all the neighborhoods and identify them? And I'll leave you with a copy of this, and you can.
I would be glad to. I would like another chance to come up and speak just for 1 second.
Your turn.
Manuel Botello, 52 Robinwood Road. I have a written concerns where I'd like to pass around to the board and some pictures. About this young man was telling me is 8 cars. I've been there for 30 years. The maximum I see there during the week is 2 cars. Maybe weekends we have 4. Not 8 cars, sir. Whatever you have information is wrong. Oh,
Please,
sorry.
talk to me.
Sorry. Not 8 cars. 2 cars during the week, maybe 4 on the weekend, not 8 cars.
Understood.
So I don't know where they're gonna get this 8 cars from. I've been there for 30 years, I've been a good neighbor. I have pictures. I like the board to take in consideration my concerns about, because it's unfair to the neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you've had your shot tonight. You'll have many more shots. Yes, sir. Please come up and identify. Did you want to respond? I'm sorry.
I just did, I'm just gonna say to the 8 cars, the house was designed for it. It
Yeah,
doesn't, I apologize if that was out of turn, but it's designed for 8 cars. I don't
Okay.
know how many were ever there.
Ali Lotfi, I live on 8 Fairview Lane, 2 houses over. And my question is regarding the dock that they're looking to put in there. Are they planning to have space for every house, they have their own dock, or is just going to be one dock for one boat?
I didn't understand your question. Did you get it?
Yeah, he's asking if the dock that we see visually presented there is one dock per house, one dock per boat. But I think the answer is that at the moment, this board is not considering the dock, and the dock will be presented to the Conservation Commission whenever they file their notice of intent. So that's, even though I made a comment about it, the Conservation Commission will provide the analysis and ruling on that. So you should address your question to them, I think.
Right. But I guess eventually also come to you guys.
Yeah, we'll get the findings back from the Conservation Commission and whatever they determine. we'll have that input. But right now, they haven't presented a dock to us, other than on that picture.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Please.
Hi, I'm Joanna Mazzulli. I live at 41 Robinwood Road. And we've been there my whole life. It was a summer home for my family. It's a tiny little cottage. Just this year, we've noticed that if we set our GPS to leave, it wants us to take Nanumet Street. And if we're coming home from somewhere, and we haven't shut it off once we get into town, it wants us to turn into Nanumet Street to come to 41 Robinwood, when it's a straight shot off of Onset Ave to our house from Robinwood. And so what we find is the Cardi's delivery truck comes from Nanumet to try and make that really sharp turn. We've tried to correct it. So if any of these construction vehicles or anyone else sets their GPS through Google Maps to get to the construction site, they're going to be sent down Nanumet Street and have to make that corner. I hear it, you know, all day, the trucks backing up and beeping. And I feel bad for the truckers. I mean, I can kind of tune it out. I feel bad for them having to try and make that turn.
We've heard this issue on other projects too, where bad maps lead people to.
It was never like that before. It's just sort of this year that we've noticed that the Google Maps has rerouted us. And that's a concern for me. And the top house, which is got no driveway. I feel like that's right in front of us, and within the wetland area where all the wildlife lives. So that is a concern too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. What was the name of the street? Manumet?
Nanumet.
Yes, sir. You have to stand, you have to come to the microphone, sir.
Yeah.
'32 Robinwood Road, Robert Aaron. I would like to ask this board to make sure that all these reports that the developer says are coming in, that we get copies of them. Somebody, I live at 32, they can put them in my mailbox and I'll distribute them.
We have a folder on the planning board website, and that's where we will post all this information. And if you want to get hard copy of it all, it will be available in the planning office.
Oh, okay.
All right?
So I'll go down there and request it there. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Yes?
My name is Pamela Karademas, and I live off of Robinwood Road at on Sherwood Road, which is the further up. But I've been in the area for a lot of time. I was a teacher for many years, and I used to take students, and we did a lot of marine science studies in the Onset Bay area. And I'm also familiar with the fishermen in the area. I look at the picture, and I see rolling green lawns, and I see nitrogen and phosphorus. I don't know if there's any regulation. I've seen it at my beach, which is called Sayers Point Private Beach, and we've lost a salt marsh, and we tried to save it. And I've been to the Conservation Commission about this many times. But that salt marsh is gone now from runoff. So my concern, and also over the next couple of years, if not by the end of this year or next year, we're going to be hearing more about the outfall pipe, that they want to have more sewer discharge from, well, I think it's the clean water discharge from the Wareham sewer plant that cannot even handle, is pretty much at maximum. So my concerns are our saltwater resources, our marine habitats, our fisheries, and this outfall pipe, the nitrogen and phosphorus. Also, to find out about the history of Robinwood Road is very interesting at the Plymouth County in the deeds, the research, the historical research of Robinwood Road. There is a lot of deeded property there, and I believe it is all pretty much private roads. And I had one more thing, but I can't think of it. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any response necessary?
No, I think most of those were within Concom's review.
Who's up? Annie? Is there anyone else that wants to speak? I do want to get moving on here. We've got another agenda item tonight. All right, we'll have one more after Annie. Annie, go ahead, please.
Annie Hayes. I'm glad the greater environment was beginning to be spoken about, besides the wildlife that has been there, and I'm shocked to hear about the filling of the pond. I know this land very well because Father Stan, who was the steward of the priory for many years and responsible for getting a lot of it into conservation, was a dear friend. And I went there many times, and I know the pond, and apparently it doesn't exist anymore. I also know that area. There used to be so many grasslands, forests, and there was a lovely maze, a meditation maze, and then you would walk down the beach, but it was all what I call open space. I don't call this open space. This is not designed for open space with contiguous properties for wildlife. And often wildlife is talked about habitat. No, there are living beings there, thousands and thousands of them making a perfect ecosystem. The other thing I want to talk about is to ask, through you, Richard, for the elevation of the land above the sea at that point, in that area.
I don't know it right now, Annie.
No, but I know you don't, but they should.
Oh, I would ask the applicant if he knows off the top of
The
his head, or...
elevations are all shown on the plans, so it would just depend on a specific spot. However, that kind of gets to your peer review and stormwater, and Bob can talk to more of the grading, because that's been a subject of conversation tonight. So, you know, I would ask Bob to be able to speak to some of the grading and the stormwater management on the site after comments are made.
Sure.
Is there a lowest point that you can refer to? I can't read it.
What's your question, Annie?
I'm asking if there's a lowest, or a highest ocean elevation that they can point to. That's the concern. Flooding is the concern.
Understood. Can I suggest that we defer to the stormwater report when we have that available? Because I think that'll provide a lot of answers and probably create more questions, too.
Okay, one point on that. They're up on piers, they seem to be protected, but in a lot of areas that are coastal these days, the Cape is buying out houses, or thinking a lot about buying out more and more houses, because when you have seawater that is inundated the pilings, it's very awkward for people to get into their home. The other thing is, what storm basis is this, and what kind of incursion from subsidence and from sea level rise has already occurred, and so data into the future, because I imagine these folks are going to sell properties and walk away. And I'm also surprised that, at least on one photograph, the houses are exactly the same. So I don't consider this a really lovely high-end. I consider it a takeover of wilderness. Thank you.
Thank you. One more speaker tonight. There will be many more public hearings. Everyone will have an opportunity. Sir, please identify yourself.
Bogdan Vernescu, 16 Cyrus Point Road. So I totally agree with most of the things that were said tonight by my neighbors. I want to make only 2 points so that I don't repeat what has been said before. The first one is that it is really interesting that the water is not draining after storms for more than a week. There are ducks playing in there. I mean, it's really nice to see, but there is some reason for which the water doesn't go anywhere, right? And so I think that a study of the water table would be interesting to have, because that would indicate us if there's any water. No, there was maybe a brook or a pond or something there. There's some water that is feeding underneath the ground, and I think that would be some indication of what can be done there or not. The other thing is that we were told tonight that since every house has 2 garages, that means that there will be 14 cars. The current house has 1 garage, and we're told that there are 8 cars, right? So I'm not sure if we multiply, if the number of garages really is relevant. More relevant is the number of bedrooms, and therefore I don't think that 14 is a good estimate. Thanks.
Taken, thank you. All right, I'd like to continue the public hearing at this point to 11:08. I don't think we have a choice. Don't what? On Robinwood? Okay. So I'd entertain a motion to continue the public hearing on 32-21 definitive subdivision plan by RESI LLC on Robinwood Road to 11:08.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion by Carl and a second by Michael King. Discussion, seeing and hearing none. Mr. King.
Aye.
Mr. Baptiste. Aye. Mr. Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Corbett. Aye. Mr. Swenson votes aye. Thank you. Okay. This is gonna be good. Public hearing on 3321, site plan review for Wareham PV LLC, 0 Route 25, map 115, lot 1000, ground-mounted solar energy facility. Yes. I may not need them. Yeah. Hello. Hello. May I introduce this to the public as to what we're doing? This is a site plan review for a solar facility off of Route 25. It's map 115, lot 1000. This property came to this planning board 3-4 months ago for an A&R. Which we assumed was a zoning freeze A&R. And now we're back. We've seen a preliminary subdivision plan and now a definitive subdivision plan. I'm sorry, I take that back. I'm reading from the wrong bullet. We just have a site plan review now for this solar. One of the issues that this board is interested in understanding is A&R freezes versus subdivision freezes, and we did see your letter from your attorney team that came in just today. We have not had an opportunity to review it, other than the fact that it doesn't seem to on the surface, agree with what other people have said. So there's work to be done there, is my point. That being said, I will turn it over to you to allow you to present what you're trying to do.
All right, and before we do that, that's me. Is this working?
Oh, very good. All right, thank you. Betsy Mason from Claiborne's Law Group here on behalf of Wareham PB1 LLC. And you've heard from me before, but I'm actually going to stand aside for now, understanding that we've got things to discuss about A&R plan freezes versus subdivision plan freezes, applicable case law, all of that, and turn it over to Sarah Eba from BHP, who will present the project.
Great, thank you. So my name is Sarah Eba from VHB. I'm the civil engineer for the project. Just to give a brief overview and then take your questions, as well as I know there were a couple comments in the staff report that I was hoping to review with you as well. As you noted, the site is at 0 Route 25. You can see on the aerial here, it's bounded by Route 25 to the south, which is plan left, cranberry bogs and forest to the east, as well as undeveloped forest to the west and north, a small commercial development and a municipal building over to the west of the site as well. The site is located within the residential 130 zoning district, which allows the solar array by a special permit. The site is 22.4 acres. Under existing conditions, it's accessed by a 20-foot wide gravel road that comes from Charge Pond Road, which sort of cuts across the figure at the top. North of this access road, which bisects the site, it's previously developed and clear. You can see the light sort of shading on the right. It's an existing sand pit right now. To the left of the gravel access road, which is the south of the site, is previously undeveloped wetlands right now. So the proposed project, and I can switch to the graphic.
I can actually move.
May I ask you a big favor? Would you mind putting the easel over here and facing it this way? Or you can just turn it, right there is fine, and just turn it so the audience can see a little bit. That's what I'm trying to do.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. King, I think you and Mr. Baptiste are familiar with the site. All right.
So the project itself consists of 12.1 acres of solar panels. The entire development, however, within the enclosed fence line is about 19 acres. It includes a new 20-foot wide gravel access path for maintenance and emergency vehicles, the panels themselves, as well as 2 stormwater BMPs, associated utility upgrades, including a new conduit from the solar panels out to Charge Pond Road as well. The fence surrounding the development is going to be 7 feet high for security as well. And at the closest point, the panels are set back at least 26 feet to the property line. Within the limits of clearing on the south side of the site, we are proposing a meadow mix, both beneath and surrounding the solar panels. This is actually similar in ground cover to the existing woods in terms of runoff rates, which is outlined in the stormwater report that's been included in the application. The report also notes that we're adhering to the 10 Massachusetts standards. We're proposing 2 small infiltration basins at the southeast of the site. We've done preliminary test pits, and the soil conditions noted that it was suitable for infiltration there. Those stormwater BMPs are to achieve peak rate mitigation from the gravel roadway. As I noted, access to the site both during and post-construction is going to be through the 20-foot wide existing roadway from Charge Pond Road, as well as the new gravel paths throughout the site. Once construction is complete, I'm sure as you've heard, it's a pretty passive use site. We really only anticipate a pickup truck maybe on a bi-weekly or monthly basis for maintenance. I know a note on the staff report and also other previous comments tonight has questioned the noise generation of the project. I wanted to know, it was specifically noted regarding the closest residence to the property. And on the site plan, I could point out exactly where the panels are the closest. It's about 225 feet from the panels to the closest residence. That's just the solar panels themselves, not counting the transformers and the inverters, which is what generates the small amount of noise from these projects. Those are well far away, set back from the residences over on Charge Pond Road. And again, we don't anticipate any notable noise increase, but if an evaluation is required regarding that, we can submit that as well. Another note in the report was in regards to screening, I believe specifically along the southern property line of the municipal building lot. Based on the zoning bylaws, it was our interpretation that the screening and landscaping buffer is 10 feet for those two uses. If that's a that's a not accurate representation of the bylaw, we can look into addressing that.
I'm not sure. I'm just going to put my cards on the table. From my perspective and my perspective only, I felt that the A&R granted you zoning freeze in terms of use. I looked at case law. I talked to people that know this, and was prepared to rule myself tonight and put this to bed, to be honest with you. I do think that I personally need the opportunity to review your legal team's response to our report, and probably get expert opinion on our behalf as well. We could dive into this plan right now, or we could address the legal issue as to the zoning. And I'm asking you what you think is most prudent. Personally, I think we should get an answer to the legal issue and before we waste any more time. I don't mean waste, that's the wrong word. I didn't mean it that way.
No offense taken.
I do have some comments for the gentleman.
But I'd ask your opinion, how you might want to proceed.
I would defer to the board, but that said, I mean, I do believe that we make some compelling legal arguments as to why the A&R plan freeze does in fact apply to the requirements that the staff report asserts would either give the board basis for denying the project or would force the reduction or reconfiguration of the project. I think it probably would behoove, well, I won't say it that way. Let me say, if we could look to the next hearing to have a discussion and resolve the issue so that we don't waste the board's time, and quite honestly, putting my cards on the table perhaps a little rudely, don't waste our team's time to moving to the next phase, whatever that may be. I think that would be.
So let me rephrase the proposal is, and I think it's a joint proposal between you and I, that we table the discussion. I mean, Carl, if you have some questions you want to get on the table tonight, that's fine as well, but that we take our staff report, we take your team's response, we review it. We just got it just before the meeting tonight.
Understood.
We engage with our town council if we feel necessary, but we set a target for 11/8, or I have a feeling that we'll need another 2 weeks after that. Is that something that's a problem for you?
I would have to discuss it with our whole team.
11/8 is going to be a busy night. So anyway,
well, we have to be able to make a motion. They have to either be able to accept the continuance or not.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. But I would ask the board, and I'm going to just put the issue very clearly on the table. It's around the zoning bylaw before or after the town meeting. The applicant's position is that the A&R that was approved by this board not only grants them use, but it also grants them acreage and clear cutting under the prior zoning bylaw, where our report, our staff report, believes that the new zoning bylaw that was passed at the town meeting in June with a 10-acre maximum and only on previously cleared land applies. I mean, it's that simple. Are we going by the old or the new zoning bylaw?
Yeah, I would say that it is old versus new. I would say it's not as simple. So I would strongly encourage the board to read our letter, and more particularly if you could engage town council to review it as well. No disrespect intended to the assistant town planner, but this is town council, especially Mr. Bowen, Attorney Bowen, having been at KP Law for years, certainly knows this stuff backwards and forwards. I may still end up disagreeing with where he comes out. Reasonable minds can definitely disagree, although I think, as I said, our arguments are pretty compelling both on the facts and under the case law. But again, that said, I don't want to belabor something that the board feels pretty plainly, even with the advice of town council, is just like, you don't want to go there, so.
Of course.
I just want to say first, I didn't get to read your comments yet, but
Okay.
I obviously respect the work and I want to be able to read them.
Yes,
to see
yes.
what they are. So I'm not going to make any comments on that right now until I see what you have to say first. And secondly, I just think we should recommend that seeing what the Attorney General's findings are as well, along with us reviewing what their comments were, is to make a decision.
Are you
on that.
aware of the status of this in Attorney General review?
Oh, yes.
Okay, yeah, and I just want to say, I didn't get a chance to read your comments, and I do want to hear what they are, obviously. So, and thank you for submitting them and getting back to me on the report.
Absolutely, yes.
So I'd ask the board, we can continue tonight and go through this proposal as if it was a properly zoned, if you will, proposal, or we can defer until after we resolve the zoning bylaw issue. Mr. King, you have a comment?
Not only the question on the zoning, but just the fact that just the fact that the letter came in at the 11th hour, I'm not comfortable acting on this at all. I'd like to read the letter and then get some input from council.
We would appreciate that as well.
Okay, Mr. Baptiste?
I feel the same way. I think we need time to digest what we have in front of us.
Mr. Corbett?
I agree with prior to, but also, I walked my dog there today. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 ponds, one large one. All the cranberry bog, all the water runs down to the corner of this property. If you walk down to this bog, walk down the side, everything goes onto that property. I mean, it is running water today. Middle of August, it's running water because everything comes from the bogs. From this pond, all the way down to the bogs goes into that end of that property. I'd be very concerned on conservation consulting on this.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes, thank you. I will hold all of my comments related to the governing bylaws and the whole solar I have a whole list, as you've heard, I don't know if you heard me earlier, but there's a whole list of questions about solar. But I have 2 problems with the application, which I think you need to consider addressing. One does relate to the governing bylaws. In your cover letter and in section 2, in your introduction section, you reference that this application is subject to the October 2018 zoning bylaws. That's a mistake or incorrect. So that's a problem with the application, I think, that we need to somehow address.
Okay.
If it's a typo or something, we just need to note it and correct it. And then on the decommissioning plan, you have the cost of decommissioning, and specifically it states the cost of decommissioning in your plan is based on 2020, 2021 rates. Bylaw 595.3 requires the inclusion of a mechanism for adjusting for inflation. So that's missing from the application. So I think that they could be addressed if you want in the meantime.
Noted.
And I'll hold all my other questions.
Okay, thank you. And we will correct the reference to the October 2018.
Yeah, point out the one that you're thinking. I think you're saying.
Right,
October
whatever
2000.
existed on June 11th, or pre the vote on June
It's
12th.
October 2019 is, I think, the one
Okay.
that you want to.
That may well be.
So those were just my two
Thank you.
administrative comments.
Mr. Buckland, do you have any comments you care to make?
Not at this time.
Mr. Rowley?
Just that I submitted a cost estimate to the planning office. When I inquired which bylaw I was supposed to review it by, I was advised to use the newest one, which would include the June adjustment, June 12th proposal that's before the Attorney General. I haven't received authorization yet to proceed, but I would assume it would make sense to wait until you resolve the issue under which bylaw you're going to operate before I actually do that. So
I would agree.
I don't have any information, and I would probably hold off until that issue's resolved.
Okay. I'm going to propose that we continue to, pardon me? I don't know that we've opened it yet.
I thought we opened it by the fact that Candace told us.
I thought,
That's the discussion we went.
Charlie, can you help us there, or have we opened the public hearing just by opening the agenda item?
You were supposed to read the announcement, but yes, you have opened the item on the hearing.
Okay. Agreed, Charlie?
I guess so.
The road we're going down to is that we're going to continue this until the 18th. I am going to ask the public for give them opportunity to speak tonight. We'll continue to the 18th, and I want you to be aware we may need more time. With our town council's very busy.
Understood, yes, I recall, if I may, when we were working on the A&R plan discussion. And may I just ask a clarifying question, was it the 8th or the 18th?
I'm sorry, 8th.
Okay, thank you.
8th. But we'll, through Mr. Buckland, we'll work with you if we need more time to push that out, then we can.
Yeah, we can, yeah, and you know, I'm not,
Sure.
I'm not the decision maker, but I will certainly bring it to the decision makers if that's the case.
So the proposal is that we take the zoning freeze issue, is it the old or the new bylaws in effect for this project, to town council for advice and input. We'll continue this public hearing to the 11/8. And any other comments from the board at this time? I'm seeing none. I will open it to the public hearing. I will open it to the public at this point for anyone that wants to speak. I would advise you that you may want to save your comments until after we resolve the zoning issue, but it is your right to speak now if you like. I'm seeing none. I'll accept a motion to continue this hearing to November 8th. I have a motion from Mr. Corbett and a second by Mr. Schultz. Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Baptiste?
Aye.
Mr. Corbett?
Aye.
Mr. Schultz?
Aye.
Mr. Swenson votes aye, 5-0-0. Okay,
All right, thank you very much.
I think this is the most expedient way to go.
Yes.
All right, good.
Agreed. Thank you very much.
All right, it's been a long night. I'm going to, does anyone on the liaison updates have anything specific they want to talk to? If not, I'll move on.
Well, on the solar, I'll just make a statement, and then we can move on. The Solar Bylaws Study Committee is making progress. We've had an interesting report by Zach I forget Zach's last name, from Borrego.
That from Borrego?
He gave us a lot of really good information about why solar projects happen, where they happen, and it was a lot of good feedback. So I think it'll inform what the zoning bylaw study committee does. But in summary, my opinion only, it's going to be very hard through bylaws to incent siting. It's really an issue, as you heard Ms. Rinta say, of the land use and the cost-benefit analysis that the landowners do. So just through bylaws, we're not really going to be able to incent behavior, I think. But that'll come. That was my opinion. Nancy could dispute me, but... And then we also had a really good call with the Cranberry, what was the name of that? The Cranberry station. The people... Yeah, the Cranberry Experimental Station, who is studying dual-use solar over Cranberry. And we got some really good input from them.
That's good.
So we're getting good input.
I missed public comment on master plan updates and new initiatives. Any feedback? Annie? I'm sorry?
I am complicit, Annie Hayes. I am complicit in not responding to that category, and it seems like meeting after meeting, it just kind of washes through. It's such a large topic to tackle. And I think, well, I was looking for the 2021 revision. Isn't that what we're giving feedback to?
No, January 2020, the one we had a motion at the June 12th town meeting. Wait, I'm sorry. It's January 2020, right?
That sounds right.
But anyway, it was the one we approved, not approved, but voiced support for at the June 12th town meeting. And the current one is on the website.
It's on under projects, master plan, 2020.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, it's the whole document.
If you can't find it,
No, I'm finding it and I'm trying to read it.
Yes.
And I'm trying to understand what the mandate is for compliance, and, you know, the planning board is listed as being one of the deciding boards in so many projects. I don't know how you're picking and choosing, but I think it's a huge thing, and I think that it could be an extremely important document, and I think it's being somewhat ignored. So if we could have it on the next agenda and give it some time, I think that'd be great.
To what end?
To really understand it better. I mean, there's so many good suggestions and processes for goals, but for example, there's this one about, promoting culture and local history. The first quote, the first step in community preservation planning is to identify, describe, and locate buildings, da, 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 da. So the historic sites are Toby Homestead. Well, that's gone.
Well, Annie, if I can interrupt you, there's like 52 strategies in there, right? And each one of them has a recommended next course of action and who the owners of those actions should be, right? I'm not sure. I'm not sure how this board can help make that happen unless we, as a board, pick up one of those initiatives and decide to run with it. The master plan is for the entire city of Wareham, or village of Wareham, town of Wareham, I guess is the right way to say it. I'm sorry. And we could debate it all night long, because I tell a lot of people the master plan is 52 contradictions to each other. It's all about where. Where are you going to do these things is where it comes down to, right? So I'm not ready to put it on the agenda right now. It's too vague and it's too new, in my opinion.
So my question to you is, what are we reviewing then to give input from?
New initiatives that you want to add or changes you want to make to existing ones. That's what the agenda item that's what we do tonight.
Okay, so I could take one specific issue and look at the contradiction and say, I'd like to change this to have not such a glaring contradiction in this? Okay.
And if you read the master plan at the end, there's a process on how to make changes to it.
For citizens as well, thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Hayes, I do want to thank you. I am fully behind your statement that that should be the vision that all town boards and commissions are aware of. And it should drive, but it's not there yet.
It's not, and it's promised in the introduction that it is the driving vehicle to get the consensus of the community to be the lead that then institutes a project or many projects, and people I talk to just don't see that happening. So it's either a promise or it's not.
Okay, future meetings. In the agenda, it calls out the enforcement of zoning and special permits on November 8th. November 8th is our next regular planning board meeting, and November 15th is our workshop on enforcement.
To that end, on workshop topics, I know future one, I myself, as we've discussed tonight, really need a better understanding of A&R and how the board operates with A&R, particularly as I try and use the A&R handbook as a guide, and I just never seem to be in sync. And then the other thing which was brought up tonight, again, a future workshop, is understanding under what guidance and when we can grant waivers. I think you said under subdivision plans, but what about under site plan? So we can't grant waivers. So that's why I said we need I need a better understanding of where we can grant waivers and where we can't.
Okay. Last thing to report, as of the second inning, the Red Sox were ahead 6-0. Another grand slam happened.
Really?
That's 3 grand slams.
I got one more thing.
Go ahead, Mr. Buckland.
As you may know, as you may remember, there's a training requirement for the board members. And but this was a policy that the Board of Selectmen put together. I just got an announcement this evening from the Citizen Planner Training Collaborative that they have new workshops that are being advertised at this time. And they're only $20 per workshop, and you can get some of that training you're looking for online with these programs.
So you'll send that information out?
I'll send it around, and you can. We'll pay for it. You just send your bill, have your bill sent to us, and we'll cover it.
Okay. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. King and a second by Mr. Corbett. All in favor, say aye. Mr. King.
Can we have discussion?
Mr. Baptiste. Oh, you want to discuss our adjournment?
I'm having so much fun.
I'm going to bop you. Mr. Baptiste.
Aye.
Mr. Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Corbett. Aye. Mr. Swenson votes aye, 5-0-0. Thank you very much, Wareham.